Did you guys have like Cabbage Patch Kids or like a teddy bear or something that you growing up?
At a very young age, Build-A-Bear had just kind of become a thing. So I had a Build-A-Bear, whatever their branded one was, but it was like a day. My mom took me in and did the whole thing. So I had that for a very long time.
I made a Build-A-Bear. His name was Barry Bonds.
Was that one of the names that they had?
No, I don't remember. It was. I think that was me. I had a teddy bear called Abracadabra.
Oh, nice.
And then I had a little one that was like his friend that was called Teddy Freddy.
Did they do anything? Did they talk? Were they like a Teddy Ruxpin or anything?
No, they were just like these Teddy. And honestly, I don't know. I'd have to find out. Like, I don't know where they came from.
Right.
I don't know if PJ's mentioned, but like, that's because our grandfather was a magician and he gave me this teddy bear. So he was Abracadabra.
Oh, that makes sense.
I haven't mentioned that he's a magician on this show, I don't think. I have mentioned the fact that his psychosis is what created our mother to be the monster that she ended up being and scaring us all the time.
You know, it's going to be really interesting to bring up what our grandfather has in the closet in the suitcase, especially about what we're talking about today.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
So my grandfather, on top of being a magician, is also a ventriloquist.
A very good one.
Oh, yeah. And he has a ventriloquial doll called Charlie. Now, Charlie McCarthy is like the most famous ventriloquial doll.
Okay.
Ever. He's in the Smithsonian Institute. Like, he's just there next to like Kermit and the Ruby Slippers and a few things.
Yeah.
He was like this really big syndicated TV show puppet.
Oh, okay.
And the guy who designed that doll had a prototype made that they didn't like. I think it was like the face was too harsh.
It was too harsh. They said the features were harsh and almost like ugly, like mannish instead of boyish. Like they weren't round and soft.
The creator was like, this will scare the fuck out of kids. Give it to your kids. Do it to them.
And so they, my grandfather, who he learned magic from, this guy had this doll. And he kept like telling the guy, I really want the doll. How much of the doll? How much of the doll? And he wouldn't give it to him. And when he passed away, he had willed my grandfather this doll. And when my grandfather was cleaning it out, he sees that this is the same maker that made Edgar Bergen's Charlie. Because you leave when you create a ventriloquial doll, you leave your calling card in their head because there's a cavity in there where all the inner workings are. Mm-hmm. And in fountain pen on the back is written in quotes, Charlie 1. And through some research, it was the prototype that they rejected from the show and told him to remake it. So the Smithsonian has contacted him and been like, we'd love that. And he's like, no, I use it. It's like it's true. It's part of the family. Yeah. But I think that's really funny. Like after just watching this movie again, I'm like, oh yeah, those movements are, he used to pull it out. I loved him. I used to like sit and talk to Charlie and like, I don't know. I feel like those sorts of things really informed how creepy I am.
Hello, all you good guys and good gals, and welcome to the Third Channel Podcast,
where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan
and a newbie to the genre. I'm PJ.
And I'm Derek.
And we're your friends to the end. And this end, the only thing we have to discuss, like every week, is horror. Of course, this week's horror comes in the variety of a new franchise.
Yeah.
I want a little soundbite that we can play there.
Okay, we'll have to figure that out.
A new franchise. Improv. Pressure's on you, pal.
Ta-da!
Okay, Ty, clip that and use that every time we start a new franchise. Or you have to move out of our attic. Speaking of people who live in our attic, recently Ty's had to share some space in the attic. That's true. With my brother and a man who simply refuses to leave you alone.
That's true, all as well.
He sees you both when you're sleeping and also when you're awake.
Yeah, and I can feel it. I know when he's watching.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Alistair Graves.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on Third Channel. This is super exciting.
You know, it took us a little while to get a guest on, and then we immediately followed up with another guest.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It was so nice we did it twice.
Mm-hmm.
I always love when my intros include being informed that I'm second choice. That really makes me feel good. Thank you.
It's not second choice as much as just the happenstance of the order in which we're recording these.
I see.
I don't have these planned out in any way.
He's talking about.
I'm sure you don't.
What Alistair's talking about in this moment is that our mother recently introduced us to a friend of hers and was like, "This is my son, Alistair, and this is my first choice son, PJ." And I was so embarrassed in that moment. I was like, "Seriously?"
It is crazy because I did come first by a number of years, and she was like, "He's first," and I was like, "I'm first," and she goes, "Not chronologically. If I had to choose to save one of you from a sinking vessel out on the great blue ocean,
our mother
it
was
would
like,
be PJ." And I was like, devastated.
Alistair, you're the firstborn, but PJ's the first choice.
That's right.
And I was an infant, and I gave the Fonz thumbs up. It was great, a lot of fun.
You know, we've talked about how cool you were as a baby.
I was a cool fucking baby. Hell yeah. We kind of set sail with this week's episode through the ups and downs, the choppy waters of the Child's Play Chucky series, with a strong start.
Yeah.
I love this movie. I think a lot of people do. But the question is, because we have a guest, do you love this movie?
Oh, I do. I do. In fact, I think that part of the reason that I'm so excited to be recording with you guys again is because I do love this franchise. I think that Chucky is like of the that mid 80s, early 90s slasher, you know, like I've heard you guys talk about the Mount Rushmore. Like I feel like Chucky is my favorite. And of course, we won't get into it now, today's episode, but the love of the character for me is simply because he started scary and ended with, you know, the black comedy that he became and then sort of back into scary again. And I just feel like no matter which way you present him, I love him. He's just evil and great.
From voodoo knife to turkey baster, Chucky remains a little guy.
That's true.
That's an interesting jump there, but you're right. That is where the franchise takes us.
I really hope that we have listeners who go, turkey baster? What? You motherfucker, you put your phone down. Don't Google that.
No.
Let us explain that to you in a few weeks. You don't spoil that for yourself, you rat bastard.
You just really wounded somebody at home.
We have 0 listeners.
That's not true.
I wounded airspace in between ears.
Our sister listens.
Yeah, she listens to tell me I'm wrong about stuff.
She's our fact checker
I know.
for PJ specifically.
I know. We talked about it at dinner tonight. It was awesome.
I told her that, and she was like, "That's great. I'll keep it up." And I was just like, "Oh God!" And my mom was like, "That's my first choice child," and I was shattered.
So, Alistair, you may or may not know, but we go by a couple, what would you call them? Not code names, but
monikers
in this show of the newbie.
Pseudonyms.
And the schmoobie.
Yes. I being the newbie, and Derek, of course, looking at him at a glance, you can tell that's a schmoobie.
Right.
Sure.
Would you consider yourself more of a newbie or more of a schmoobie when it comes to the horror franchise, or to the horror genre?
Like in general? Oh, I'm a schmoobie for sure.
Okay. You've been in it a while?
As long as I can remember, I have been a fan of horror.
What brought you to horror?
Okay, so when I was little, and I mean like 2 or 3 years old, like little, before PJ was born, in the what I like to call golden era of my life.
I thought you meant the golden era of my birth.
No, that's a different evening. Before PJ was born, I was really afraid and grew up mostly afraid of horror, honestly, even into like 7, 8 years old, whatever. But one of the ones that I was so afraid of was the Wolfman. I don't know what it was about the Wolfman, but I had this recurring nightmare, 3, 4 years old, that the Wolfman was outside. And at the old house that I grew up in, my father and I used to take the trash out the side door, and there were all these, like a canopy of trees. And in this dream, we knew the Wolfman was out on the prowl, but we had to get the trash out. I don't know why at all we would do that, but we had to get the trash out. And every time we thought we were safe.
Only comes twice a week. You gotta get it out.
It's piling up.
My assumption is that there are like chicken and turkey carcasses.
Sure,
and
but
pieces
I'm like,
of beef
I'm
that would
not
attract
kidding.
the Wolfman into the home.
Oh, and you got to get them out. Yeah.
Well,
I'm only like 3 or 4 years old. I mean, seriously, this is like my dreams. And it would happen like once a week. And we always would get right back to the door and like look up. And in the canopies, I would see the Wolfman perched up. And I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Maybe I like saw a clip or something as a child. Like, I don't know. What I do know is that to soothe me, at one point, my mother said, the monsters wouldn't hurt you, though, because they love you. You're their friend. And it stopped being scary for me. The Universals and like, I mean, that's kind of my bread and butter and where I got into horror is the monsters, even to this day, like the Universal monsters. But most monsters at that point weren't scary anymore because they really, I don't know how much we've gotten into this in the past, but PJ and I grew up like in church, and I have still, the tithing envelopes where my father and I would go back and forth drawing like Dracula, Frankenstein, whatever. He would write me notes in my lunch to Dracula from Frankenstein and like vice versa.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it just became this like, almost like it went from being a terror to like literal creature comforts where the monsters were my buddies, and kind of that feeling of, oh, what's that movie with, is that Little Monster? Is that the one with Howie Mandel? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kind of feeling of like, oh no, these are like my guys. Like, I love these guys. I hang out with them. And my last anecdote here is my mother, I was probably 4. My mother said, what do you want to dress as today? And I said, Dracula. And it was May. Mm-hmm. And she sat me down and did the white makeup, put the red lips on with a little bit of blood, did my eyebrows like kind of like an Eddie Munster, did the Widow's Peak. And I had this baby blonde hair, but she would take the black cream makeup and comb it through. Mm-hmm. I had really straight hair when I was young. And so she would comb it through and make this like little vampire and put me in my little tux that we had because I had been Dracula the year before for Halloween. Gave me the medallion like Bella has, put me in a cape and my little dress shoes, which were adorable because they were like Build-A-Bear shoes. I mean, I'm little. And she put me in the car and took me to like Publix and like the mall, and people were staring, and she's like, what? He's Dracula. And it was like May. Yeah. So like I think we owe a lot of our coolness to our mom being like, you want to be Dracula today? All right. That's cool. Let's be Dracula today.
Yeah, I actually have 3 follow-up questions. The first follow-up question is, would you say that dressing up as Dracula that day is kind of the first touchstone of what would then be a storied career? Is that like the first time you see like a picture of you and go, oh, there he is?
Honestly, and I had never really considered that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they can find out more info in the description of this very episode. But I do cabaret, I do burlesque, I do cosplay, a lot of makeup. I've kind of built a career on being made up. And I think so. I think that really is like the first time I look back maybe ever had like a full face of makeup on. But yeah, it was becoming something cool and something different.
Number 2, on those envelopes, those tithing envelopes, pictures of monsters, no pictures of Jesus. Why do you think that is? Did you hate Jesus?
No.
I have this habit on this show, by the way, of I make a joke that's a little too far, and then I tell Derek, you can cut it if you want, and then he never does to make me look like an asshole. So I'm just pushing the envelope now.
My knee-jerk joke, which again, I'm talking about being raised in church, and I know our mother listens, but my knee-jerk joke was going to be like, well, because I sort of hoped the monsters were real.
Oh, that's good. High five.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. You can cut this out if you'd like. And then my final question.
Well, you know what, though? Just like all those other monsters, Jesus came back.
That's true.
Dracula returned. Wolfman, they all return or have a daughter.
Yeah. I mean, Wolfman does perish.
No, they all die. They just come back. Anyway, what's your third question?
How long would you say you've been a fan of the streaming service Tubi, which, by the way, despite being free, has very little advertisements that you have to skip through in order to have a good, clean viewing process? Again, Tubi.
That's a really good point.
We want your sponsorship so bad we're willing to take it for free.
Is this is that what this is? Okay, hold on. You know, when it's been a long week and I just want to sit down and take the stress off and get away from the world,
tune it out.
I flip to Tubi because they have guaranteed what I'm looking for. Whether it be a high-flying action adventure, a calming, soothing rom-com that I can chuckle at over a nice red wine and steak, a scary horror film that I can cuddle with my partner up under the sheets with and make sure that I really get my thrills in. No matter what I'm in the mood for, Tubi has me covered. with very few advertisements that are tailored through algorithmic perfection to be exactly what I'm looking for, Tubi's my answer for entertainment. So no matter what you're doing, make this weekend a Tubi weekend. My name is Alistair Graves, and I approve this message.
Tune out the world. Tune in to Tubi.
Oh, that's good.
We just did it.
Yeah, man.
Dude, we're going to get that sponsorship.
Hold on, guys.
Hashtag Tubi's for schmoobies.
Tubi, if you're listening, this is Alistair. The guys can't hear me right now. Please listen. They really need this. I really need this. We all really need, but they really need this. Hook them up.
Well, now that we can hear again.
Yeah, it's crazy how if I whisper, you guys can't hear me. It's good.
Yeah.
So, Alistair, on the show, as we begin to discuss the film, we will typically read the summary off of IMDb, and we look to see if they're quality or terrible. Terrible can be found in a couple of ways. Terrible can be found. Are they too wordy? Are they too few words? Does it give away the whole movie? Does it not explain enough?
You're literally rating
from IMDb.
Okay.
So here is the summary to the film Child's Play, as read on IMDb. A dying serial killer transfers his consciousness into a popular kid's doll using voodoo. A struggling single mother gifts her 6-year-old son the much sought-after doll for his birthday, and the doll slowly begins to show its true colors. I would say it kind of gives away the farm that the doll is the serial killer, but outside of that, I think it's concise.
Well, can I be honest, though? The doll being the serial killer is the first 2 minutes of that film.
It's assumed, but it's a gradual, you have an idea, but it shows you
saying
over time.
Through voodoo did kind of give up the ghost too soon.
Okay. I'm going to give it, we're not doing stars. I'm going to give it
Not bad, though. I think it covers what it needs to.
better than some.
Better than some.
It's a super 80s thing, too, to be like, through voodoo. Like, what if...
That was, and that was, I'll go into it in a bit, but that was kind of a, not a last minute, but a third draft of the script that was like, yeah, we'll make it through voodoo. Okay.
You got to have a reason.
That is true. Here on our journey, this new franchise that we're starting, Child's Play. Released November 9th of 1988. Was directed by Tom Holland.
Who would then go on to play Spider-Man, yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, no, guys. There could be more than one Tom Holland.
Not at a time.
Bro.
How old do you think he wouldn't have been alive in 88?
Clearly he used voodoo.
Yeah, he was alive in 88.
I guess that could be the answer for anything now.
Excellent answer.
It's written by Don Mancini. Is it Mancini?
I've
C
heard
in Italian is
Mancini.
typically cha. However, it's also kind of Americanized. So
That's fair.
I'm going to assume Mancini.
We'll go with Mancini. It's also written by John Lafia and Tom Holland. They all took a crack at this one, which that's a whole thing later. It's produced by David Kirshner. The cinematography for this film is done by Bill Butler, who is a name who... one of his biggest and things that one that I love the most is Jaws. He was a cinematographer on Jaws, so that sort of using the POV of the shark kind of plays into this, where we use the POV of the doll.
As soon as you said that, I was, I see it.
Yeah. He also was the cinematographer on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which has some tie-in with some other people here in a second. He was the cinematographer on Damien, The Omen 2, Grease,
Little Scary Kids.
Rocky 2, 3, and 4, Anaconda, and Frailty, which is a horror movie. I think it was directed by Bill Paxton and acted in.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't know Bill Paxton directed something.
I think it was his directorial debut, but don't quote me on that. It's edited by Edward Warshilka, probably butchering that name, but he had worked on things like 16 Candles, Howard the Duck, Rambo 3, and Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, and also edited by Roy E. Peterson, who did The Longest Yard, the original with Burt Reynolds. He edited a movie called Caveman, which is Ringo Starr as a caveman.
I'm pissed off that I didn't know this existed until this moment. Yeah. I'm devastated.
Yeah.
And then
all those,
and then
you have so many
obviously.
Blu-rays, but you don't have that one.
Yeah, I haven't picked that one up yet. Budget for this film,
Oh God.
What are we doing, guys?
I'm gonna do
guessing?
the same. I'm gonna do the same thing I did last week with Carly, and I'm gonna have Alistair give me his guess so that I can give you my guess. So if he's right, I'm right, and if he's wrong, he's wrong. Okay, Alistair, what is the budget for Child's Play?
See, this is really hard because it was like late 80s and money is different now.
But they had puppets, good ones.
Yeah. Okay, so let me start. I'm just gonna flat say $1 million, and I want you to like I'm way low. Am I way low or am I just low?
Probably way low.
You're decently low.
Okay, let's say 10. Seriously, 12? 15.
You never give me these. You never give me the hints.
Again, you don't ever ask. You just blurt out a number.
I laid out the rules.
$45 million.
It's not. $45 million
is how much they made?
$44 million is what they made.
This is like the third time I've done this.
Yeah, that's the box office, baby.
There it is.
So
the
was
budget
it 20?
was between 9 and 13.
Oh, okay.
What Mancini gave on the commentary was $16 million. Okay.
So he says 16, and then the reporting is 9 to 13. So reasonably, probably somewhere between 13 and 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Tom Holland, other than not being Spider-Man,
I can look it up right now.
IMDb. It exists.
Yeah, there's going to be 2 entries at least. There's probably more than that.
One from his first life when he worked on Child's Play, and then after the voodoo, he became Spider-Man.
And for a while, he was Billy Elliot.
Okay.
I'm a big Tom Holland fan. Nice try, jabroni.
Read a book, Derek.
He was a writer on Psycho 2.
Oh, cool.
And then he directed Fright Night, Fatal Beauty, The Temp, the Stephen King miniseries The Langoliers, and Thinner, which is also a Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
And if you remember, PJ, that is the film that Dino De Laurentiis offered to Sam Raimi, who turned it down.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Thinner was almost a Raimi film?
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what he asked for. And then Raimi turned him down for that, but that he still kept him under the fold because De Laurentiis then did, he produced Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Dino De Laurentiis was like, hey, Raimi, I got this film for you. And Raimi was like, can I put my brother Ted in it 45 times?
And
Dino
Raimi-
De Laurentiis was like, no.
Raimi would then go on to direct Spider-Man, the not Tom Holland
God.
Spider-Man.
It's all connected.
Dude,
Typically, I'm the one that makes all those connections, and you beat me to it, man.
you weren't ready for this.
I was not. The writer and the writer and the producer are the ones that are more important in a lot of ways to this franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
Because you have Don Mancini, who he wrote a movie called Cellar Dweller, which was produced by the same person who did the Puppet Master movies. It was an early movie that they did. But then Don Mancini also wrote, Child's Play 1 through 3, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Curse, Cult, the Chucky series. He's also the director for Seed of Chucky, Curse, Cult, and then the Chucky series.
And I think it really does in these sort of full franchises. It goes so far when the writer stays the same because the spirit of who these characters are or who this character is so rarely shifts when it's just one person who goes, well, here's the next one. That's
also
really
happens
cool.
very rarely.
We just happened to land, we started this podcast talking about 3 franchises where there is one voice or 2 voices who carry over an entire franchise.
It's like
for
the first is Scream with Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson. And then and Harriet. You cut that. And then the second franchise of Evil Dead with Sam Raimi and their team, Robert Tappert.
and then Bruce Campbell, of course.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also interesting that Brad Dourif is almost exclusively Chucky.
Right.
And so again, you've got the familiarity of the writing and the actor who really brings him to life, and probably a lot of the same staff, I would assume, over the years too.
Yeah, and the other big name there is their producer, David Kirshner. So he has an interesting career because he created An American Tail, the animated film. You may know its sequel, An American Tail, Fievel Goes West.
I know both of those films.
Yeah, he is the creator of Fievel. He worked with Don Bluth in that animation company for a while.
PJ and I grew up watching those films at our Nana's house.
Uh-huh.
That is wild.
For the agile-eared listener, Nana was the grandmother who currently haunts Derek's chair.
That's true.
Wow, that's a throwback to episode 0, I believe.
Yeah.
He also was the producer for Hocus Pocus 1 and 2.
Awesome.
He was the producer for the live-action Flintstones movie. The Page Master.
What a great,
He's got a really cool career.
this guy has had.
Producer for Cats Don't Dance, the animated film Titan AE,
I
and
love
also,
that
That's
movie.
also a good movie.
and also Frailty, which is that Bill Paxton horror.
Who is this now?
David Kirshner. He's the producer on this film.
What an awesome career that guy had. I'm very and it spans from wholesome kids cartoons to really terrifying films.
And then his name is on all of the Chucky franchise.
Yeah, that's so cool.
The other writers were John Lafia. He is the director of Child's Play 2. So we'll talk about him more next week. As Alistair already pointed out, Chucky is played and voiced by Brad Dourif. And this is where, so he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So that's the tie with the cinematographer of Bill Butler.
I think that's probably the first time I think that's the earliest Brad Dourif performance that I've seen. It may be one of the earliest.
I think it's one of his earliest, if not his first.
It's funny because that's him, DeVito, and
Jack Nicholson.
Well, outside of Jack Nicholson, Christopher Lloyd.
Well, and DeVito and Jack Nicholson both go into Batman really close to this film, Child's Play. They're both going. That's their next big things. Also, there's a lot, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But I commented tonight when we were rewatching that. It really evokes a lot of Gotham. Shining. I was going to say The Shining talking about Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yes.
There's so much Shining that it evokes. And then, outside looks, I think I said it twice, that it looks so much like Gotham City. And I'm just
We have to preface this that Alistair Graves is a huge Batman 89.
I'm a Bat-phile, honestly. It's
Batman 89 is a thing that he really enjoys. It is a film. And he enjoys it like it isn't.
Guys, fuck Child's Play. Let's talk about 89 Batman. So,
he enjoys
directed
it like scripture.
by Tim Burton. Go ahead.
Other things that Brad Dourif has appeared in that we've kind of mentioned before: David Lynch's Dune, David Lynch's Blue Velvet, The Exorcist 3.
Which, by the way, is another tie to him being in an asylum of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
Because One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then he comes back as Legion.
Yes.
And that's probably, that performance
is amazing.
I think it's his best. And that's saying something.
That is really saying something.
Because he plays Chucky in a lot of movies, and he's good at it.
He's also in Alien Resurrection, which was written by Joss Whedon, who we talked about last week. And he is in The Lord of the Rings,
There you go.
The Two Towers, and The Return of the King.
And then
as well as
a little horror movie that you may or may not have heard of called Rob Zombie's Halloween. He plays Sheriff Brackett.
Yes, he does.
And he does a very good job.
Such a good casting that I wouldn't have thought to make that casting choice, and it's so good.
And we're not talking about that, but he is as good in that movie as Malcolm McDowell is bad in it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That is fair. Just to go over some of the production stuff for this movie, Don Mancini, he first conceived of the idea of Chucky, of a killer doll movie, while he was studying literature at UCLA, and then he wrote his first draft of the screenplay studying film at Columbia University. That was in 1986. He was inspired mainly by consumerism of the 1980s and the effect of marketing for children's products.
Yeah.
Basically, his dad was in advertising, I believe.
Well, and it is like that. The establishment of their sort of universe is this kid running around wearing the pajamas. He's got the slippers on. He's making the cereal. He's watching the cartoon, which is then there's an advertisement in between the cartoon for the doll. And it's just Which is very much our childhood, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Like coming up in the 90s, that's all
Sitting
it was.
in front of the television watching whatever 90s cartoon in the morning, playing with the toys in the shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and often we were watching the cartoons that were made to sell the toys, not the other way around, too.
Yeah.
Like
TMNT, He-Man.
Mummies Alive. Like, yeah.
Well, and it's the interesting thing and the tie there with the movie is you see the cartoon and they're talking about how now you can buy your own My Buddy doll.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, yeah, G.I. Joe, I believe, was like that. The Transformers,
Yeah.
He-Man, they started as cartoons that were then used to sell a toy.
Yeah. Transformers. Yeah. A lot of those franchises.
Charles Band, who is the person who was... he directed or he produced Don Mancini's first film, Cellar Dweller. He's the one who went on to make the Puppet Master franchise. He was interested in the script, but basically couldn't give him what he needed for the level of like puppetry and animatronics and things like that he would need for Chucky. So he had to pass on it. And then that's when David Kirshner picked it up and agreed to fund it.
And you said that guy came in for 2?
No.
Oh, okay.
The secondary writer
Gotcha.
of the movie, he directed.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, have you seen Cellar Dweller? You've referenced it a couple times. So
I
don't
have not.
Okay.
I was just looking up facts, and so I kind of,
Because I kind of wonder if there's animatronics in that one, because when you talk about this into Puppet Master, I feel like I'm looking, when you see Puppet Master, I'm looking at a lot of the same techniques that they use in this film, like a lot of them.
Just cheaper.
Yeah, well, way cheaper and more. They use claymation a lot in Puppet Master, but that's because they're supposed to be like the size of like a can of soda. They're like little guys, most of them.
Where Puppets Master trick to get more fluid motion is stop motion. This one is the use of like little people actors.
Yeah, or children in Chucky costumes. Kirshner was interested in doing a movie about a killer doll. He had read a book called The Dollhouse Murders, and he was looking to branch out from his work in children's entertainment after An American Tail. And so they originally, Mancini's original, I'm gonna pronounce his name different every
says
single time.
Mancini when I look at Google. Now it's a cursory search, but it does say Mancini according to Google.
I'm gonna try and be better about it. No promises. But his original script was titled Batteries Not Included. But
That's good.
Especially with the twist.
What ended up happening is they were going to, he wanted to call it that. And they were like, oh, wait, no, Steven Spielberg is producing a movie that's called Batteries Not Included. So you can't touch that.
Hilarious.
He then
The
changed
question
it
is,
to,
was Steven Spielberg's Batteries Not Included any good?
I don't know. I know the poster for that movie. I've never seen it. But then they renamed the movie to Blood Buddy. And
Also good.
Like, that's where I think the name of the My Buddy doll,
Yeah, fair enough.
came in. But the problem is that My Buddy is an actual doll from the era.
That's funny.
It's like a Teddy Ruxpin, like that's like a named thing. So that's that when they go with good guy
it's
instead.
kind of like that, kind of like, the Cabbage Patch Kids. All of that was coming up in the era. And so they were like, well, we can't call it that because then they're going to think that we're, talking about that doll specifically. And so it eventually changed to Child's Play. Kirshner then hired Tom Holland to rewrite and direct the film based on Steven Spielberg's recommendation. So all of this, like Steven Spielberg has a hand in all of this, even though he didn't work on this movie at all. He just happened to know a lot of the players who came in.
I feel like this is one of those entries into like the very small library shelf that is 80s animatronic thriller films, because there are like a shitload of them, but not compared to like the whole zeitgeist. There's just like, I can rattle off 30 or 40 and I bet they're all the same people. Like, that's why when you're like, yeah, Spielberg said, call this guy or talk to, I'm like, of course he did, because he had just done a bunch of them and was going to go on to do even more of them.
Yeah, Spielberg's got a killer doll guy.
Well, so like, this is like 86. When was E.T.?
82.
Okay, and when was Jaws?
75.
So like, Spielberg's the guy to go to for this at this point.
Yeah, truly.
All right, fair enough.
Holland, he was the one who came up with the idea that the doll would be possessed by a serial killer. And he named the new character Charles Lee Ray, and he based it on like 3 murderers who were like big names in the news at the time. So Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, and James Earl Ray. The first 2 I think are pretty self-explanatory. James Earl Ray is who shot and killed MLK.
Oh my God.
So And then Ray and his accomplice of Eddie Caputo are based on the Hillside Stranglers, which were I don't know if they were brothers or cousins or whatever. They were a pair of murderers, I guess, stranglers, which is where he gets his title off the top of the movie, the Lakeshore Strangler.
Which makes sense because one thing I've always wondered about this movie is I guess I didn't know that was somebody, like a real person. The Stranglers were kind of a duo.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why the fuck does a serial killer have like a getaway driver? Why does he have like a wheels man?
Who then leaves him.
Like, come on, Eddie, you got to get me out of here. And it's like...
The establishing shots
are robbing banks but just killing people instead? And then he's like, when are you going to bring me money? I got to feed my kid.
Also, I'd like to point out that they call him the Strangler, but I think in the whole film, he only attempted strangles once.
Right.
Which is...
Well, and once he's the doll, it becomes difficult for him to do it with his tiny hands.
Yeah. He's way more of a stabber, honestly.
You could do that. He could. All he needed to do as a little dog was to get one of those dog pound, or as a little doll, all he needed to do was get one of those little dog pound cinch things.
Yeah, well, he
could just choke people out with that.
He uses the cable in the cop car.
Right. Oh, and then his, and we're just cutting way ahead. That's fine. But his little robot hand comes out of the vent and chokes that one dude.
You're right. He tries to strangle twice. Thank you.
Okay, well, he can do it with the little hand. If anything, he'd crush a windpipe real fast.
That's true.
You've bested me, sir.
Well, we've bested Don Mancini.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Tom Holland, he had left to direct a new film called Fatal Beauty, and MGM and United Artists, who were the production companies at the time, they nearly canceled Child's Play because it was like stuff just wasn't coming together, and so Holland stepped away. They needed a new director, but they brought in John Lafia to complete a new version of the script. He is who came up with the idea of transferring, the serial killer's soul into the buddy doll after being electrocuted by an electric chair, and the doll was being manufactured on an assembly line. Those are ideas that kind of get used later, which is funny because Lafia is the one who then goes on to direct Child's Play 2.
I just feel like I buy that even more than just the ham-fisted where they're like, it's voodoo, and it's like,
okay, look, all right. It's easy to buy the plot of Frankenstein as the reason that your doll is a monster.
Just give me some sci-fi.
But the other thing is they spent an entire fucking scene establishing that it's voodoo, and they painted the little knife with skulls. They made him have an entire fucking, because they go to his apartment and he's got like an entire Candyman mural on the wall.
Yeah.
It's like, at least they went there. It wasn't just voodoo. They went
I
through some effort.
agree. I'm just saying, if you took away those two scenes and you took him saying voodoo out of the film, you wouldn't lose any of the plot at all.
Right. It is interesting the first time I watched this, because this was not one that I watched as a kid. I actually watched this Child's Play 1, 2, and 3 for the first time in 2016. It was during October, during one of my many 31 Days of Horror.
I guess there's a bit of housekeeping with this franchise as we kind of start it. This is a weird one because this is one where I had seen Child's Plays 1, 2, and 3 probably about that time with Carly, but then we kept going and we watched Bride and Seed of Chucky, which you had then not seen.
Yeah, I hadn't seen them until 2 years ago.
So this is one of those rare instances where I've kind of seen as much as you have. And then we went into Curse and Cult together for the first time.
It's interesting that you say that because around that same time is where, when I was at the apartment that you guys used to hang out all the time, I mean, you participated several times and I would just put on random franchises. We watched the whole Blade trilogy and random stuff. And that's one that I watched around that same time. But I guess you guys weren't there for that. But me and the roommate, Dylan, my roommate, we just would sit and watch these. So we did the whole franchise up to that.
Yeah, I want to say for that October, there was a night that you came over to hang out at my old apartment. And it was either Child's Play 2 or 3 that I was going to put on.
I think it was 3 because we watched it. Spoilers, it's the military one, because we were laughing. Because honestly, by 3, they're doing that thing where they're still trying so hard to be scary, but they're adults with machine guns. I'm like, kick him. It's a doll.
And what's probably the scariest part about 2016 in general is the fact that was 9 years ago.
Oh my God.
You guys, as I said that, did you guys feel your discs in your back compress a little bit from the gravity?
I shrank. Yeah.
Holland was then finally rehired as the writer-director after he completed Fatal Beauty. And he did extensive rewrites on the script. And that's where he moved the setting to like the working class, like urban apartment in Chicago. He changed Karen from being an advertising executive to working in a department store. And he really like hammered down the voodoo magic with the help from Damballa to transfer the soul into the doll. Kirshner and Mancini were not loving the voodoo subplot, but that's what they went with. That is the screenplay that got used. And then Holland has argued that his final rewrite was so extensive that he should have sole writing credits for this. And both Lafia and Mancini disputed that. And the Writers Guild, they basically ruled that all three should share credit. And this has been a sticking point apparently between the three of them forever.
I was going to say, I can't imagine the three of us working for multiple years on a project and then me leaving and then coming back after I did my own shit. I did my own thing over here. And then I come back and then I'm like, hey, so I'm going to take what you guys have like built up. I'm going to add some spice, Salt Bay, a little, some tweaks. It's mine. You did nothing. And then we're going to fight about it for the rest of our lives. Like that's just bizarre.
Like so much so that Lafia and Mancini didn't go to set while they were shooting because they were like, we do not want like beef.
Wow.
That must be part of the reason that Holland goes on to be in Uncharted.
Oh my God.
Well, and Mancini famously playing Sal, the guy that teaches him in that film. That's a great film.
It is very good.
I'm going to just Sally Forth ahead.
Sally Forth, what did she do?
Oh God.
He's talking about Sally Fields.
I'm now talking about Talkie Tina. Is that a name that rings a bell, PJ?
It is. We have now entered
The Twilight Zone?
The Twilight Zone.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
So yeah, Talkie Tina was from an episode of the television series The Twilight Zone from the 50s and 60s, and was one of the first like devil doll characters that was in movies and TV. She herself was a spoof of the real life doll Chatty Cathy, who was a like a baby doll that could talk.
And all of those were just a ripoff of Annabelle. So
well, and the actress June Foray, who was the voice of Chatty Cathy, also did the voice for Talkie Tina. So you had like the exact same voice happening.
That's cool.
So that's what really inspired Chucky, and as well as the Devil Doll from Trilogy of Terror, which was a 1975 horror anthology film, a TV anthology. Chucky himself is designed by or built by, I guess, Kevin Yeager. Kevin Yeager Productions is someone who I'm sure we're going to be talking about very soon in other franchises because he worked on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, and 4. He also did work on Face Off, Starship Troopers, and Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Man, so he genuinely was like the creature effects guy.
Yes.
Or like the body effects too, it sounds like. Okay.
Yes. And then what's funny, and another reference that we just keep running into, is that he met his wife, Catherine Hicks, on this film. Catherine Hicks playing Karen Barclay. So another actress falling in love with a like
SFX guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just keeps happening. Obviously, in this film, they use various ways to portray Chucky, including RC animatronics, little people, like we've already stated, and child actors, and used extensively through pretty much every scene of the movie. And I'm sure we'll kind of point out what we noticed when they're using different techniques as we go along.
You know something? It hurt. It hurt like a son of a bitch. It even bled. Now, why is that, John?
You're turning human.
What?
The more time you spend in that body, the more human you become.
You mean I have to live out the rest of my life in this body? No fucking way! You got me into this, you get me out.
I can't do that, Chucky.
Why not?
Because you're an abomination. An outrage against nature. You perverted everything I've taught you and used it for evil, and you have to be stopped.
You know, I thought something like this might happen. That's why I prepared for it.
What are you talking about?
Your own personal mojo, Doc.
Give me that.
Sure. How do you want it? Broken leg?
Ah!
And he twists the leg of that voodoo doll, and not Candyman falls down. It's crazy because that guy, and Chucky says his name in the clip we just played, but the voodoo doctor,
Priest of Damballa.
right? That guy's name is John.
Yeah. In the credits, he is credited as Dr. Death. What I think that is that there's a deleted scene where earlier in the movie you see him do some sort of voodoo ritual.
Okay.
That got cut out. So I guess he was known as Dr. Death earlier in a different script.
It would also have made way more sense. This is the thing about the whole voodoo angle. Is I feel like, okay, so you got this, it's a serial killer, and he's going around and he's serial killing. And in that clip, you can hear him be like, you've perverted everything I taught you and used it for evil. And I'm like, so did you not know he was the stabby guy when you taught him? Because he acts like he's like on this moral high ground of like, you're doing evil with the voodoo. I'm like, he was doing evil by strangling with his hands.
Also, for the record, the spell is to body swap with someone to live forever. Mm-hmm. So by its nature, if you're swapping into someone else... Right. I don't. It's like it's just, and for him to be like, this is evil, and it's like, did you think he was going to body swap with somebody willingly? And I don't know, like, just the whole thing is so ham-fisted. It doesn't make sense. Maybe, hear me out. Maybe the voodoo doctor, his frame of evil is different than ours. His moral lens. That's fair. So what he thinks is evil is Catholicism, and Chucky is both strangling people and is a priest.
You know what? If that's true, I agree with Dr. Death.
Yeah, John.
So the movie,
his friends call him John.
Yeah.
The film begins with the priest Charles Lee Ray running away from the police.
Yeah.
In downtown Chicago,
Gotham
in mean
City.
streets, Chicago.
This film was shot in Chicago, like on actual streets for the most part. The apartment was a set. Just so they had to build it obviously elevated so that they could put puppeteers in the floor.
Right. Which is...
And hide his wires.
So I also... The apartment... At one point I looked over at PJ and I just said, dude, this is like... She's supposed to be like struggling. She's like a lower class struggling. She almost gets fired. It's my kid's birthday. Like she's clearly like not in a good position.
Right.
Yeah.
She tells him, I couldn't afford that doll because I didn't know about it before the paycheck. It'll have to wait. And then she's living in like a really nice apartment.
Yeah, it's like a corner apartment.
Beautiful bay window, like up for several stories.
Yeah.
In like the elevator is like super nice. It is in no way a rundown apartment like at all. No. And I was like, is the cost of living from 88 to now just that shitty?
Well, it's that. It's also, I think, a staple of 80s, 90s media in general. Because like
the Home Alone house.
Well, like how the fuck did the people in Full House afford that house? That house is massive.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like every Insidious or Conjuring or like any movie, like a really egregious example, and I think I've mentioned it on this show, is the movie Cobweb with Anthony Starr, where the whole thing takes place in a house, but like the living room of their house is a fucking black box theater. It's huge.
Yeah. It's,
one thing I do want to point out about this opening sequence, because I think it's good and it's dramatic, and it's establishing that it does the thing that I like with these very genre horror movies, where it opens in a way that you don't expect it to.
Yeah.
It's not a doll. There's a guy and he's running from a cop, and then you see the toy store and you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, and also for the record, the cop is the worst cop ever. Our hero cop, he's terrible.
Well, first of all, he cannot shoot a gun to aim for his life. He misses almost every shot. I think he makes 2 shots in the whole film.
But the thing is, he gets our antagonist one good time, who's now bleeding all over the white fucking tile floor, and then he's literally like, I have to keep screaming stuff on our show. So many times I'm like, let me do this away from the mic. He's like, I'll get you. I'm going to fucking kill you. He's like screaming his lungs out. And then he knocks over the entire front display of the store.
And they're not in like a fucking FAO Schwartz. Like this is like, it's not the biggest
it's like a
store.
GameStop.
No, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And the cop is like, it keeps cutting back to the cop who's like turning around and he's like only in the one spot.
Where
and
is
he's like, where could he be? It's like the guy is screaming at you.
Yeah.
He's right there.
And then he does no less than 30 seconds of voodoo magic loudly. And it's like, there he is.
In defense of our police officer, the storm is very loud.
That's true.
From doing the voodoo.
Right.
So then he does that thing where he like sees this doll and he's like, I got it. Because he says out loud, like, I got to find somebody or find a body or someone.
He realizes that he is going to bleed out.
Well, he says, I'm dying. And it's like, yep.
And so he does. Several times he says, I got to find somebody. I got to find somebody. And he is,
And instead of leaving the toy store that he broke into where he knows there's no one, he goes deeper into the toy store looking for someone.
He's been shot. He's lost a lot of blood. He's not thinking very straight.
He's like, I gotta find a Woody doll.
no, that's not big enough.
That's not it.
But that's all we can do. Otherwise, we'll get demonetized. We'll get flagged. Like and subscribe.
Well, I feel like the horror version would be like more adult. They'd be like, Toy Story, you got a friend in you. Okay, I'm sorry. Go. You can cut it out.
No, we'll keep it. Okay. And we'll keep you saying that we can cut it, and me saying this now.
Cut it. Cut that.
And so, but then he finds the good guy dolls, and they're like in boxes. They stand what 2 feet tall.
It's a tall doll. It's like because it's the same. He's almost the same size as the kid. Andy, he's almost that big.
Yeah. There's a shot in like a couple scenes from now. There's a shot where Maggie, our heroine's friend from the store, picks Andy up and then picks Chucky up. And Chucky's like clearly bigger.
Like heavy.
Like his feet are knocking against the ground.
But he's not a man-sized thing. Like honestly, reaching out to the mannequin would have maybe been a better option or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just.
And I don't know what the rules are for this voodoo.
Well, apparently he didn't care what the rules were because John said he perverted it.
That's a good point.
Well, and more
for
than
evil.
More than that, that movie exists. That movie is called Mannequin.
That's true. But yeah, so he's like, he gets this smile, like, I got it. And he like opens I guess you got to open him up. He opens the box and he puts his hand in his head and does the whole thing.
He does the whole chant.
Which I think is just giving the power I beg of you in a bunch of different languages.
Yeah, like I have a possible translation.
Some of it sounds Spanish, some of it sounds French. It
a lot
like
of it is mistaken as French because it's Haitian Creole.
Okay.
But the possible translation that I have is, I call to thee, Damballa, give me the power I beg of you. Leave me mercy from this mortal coil. Grant me life beyond death. Move my mortal soul into this vessel. I command to thee, Damballa, I command to thee. And then it repeats that over and over and over again.
It's actually pretty sick.
They made this before Google Translate. How do you think they translated this into French Creole?
People have spoken those languages.
Yeah, but not Don Mancini. He only speaks Italian.
And then there's a giant lightning strike through the skylight of the toy store.
Yeah.
And there's this incredible stunt of an actual explosion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right on the street, like just blows it out. And
that was a real storefront. I believe it was an old Chinese restaurant that they then dressed as a toy store.
And what they do, just rig it and blow it up?
Yeah.
That explains why there's like barely any shelves, that it's all just like set onto like
stacked
counters
on
and
each other and
stuff.
stuff.
And I don't know if it's just a money thing or if it's like a practicality or safety thing or whatever, but I miss the old movies where they just be like, all right, we got to rig some shit up and blow it up, because that would be totally they'd just be like, oh, it's CGI now.
Yeah, but it's very impressive.
Yeah, and isn't that the one where doesn't Norris come out the window? Does he do like a tuck and roll or something?
He doesn't come out the window, but he does. He's standing on like a second floor, and he is blown backwards into
I
like a bunch
literally
of
just
toys
watched this, and I'm asking like an hour ago, and I'm like, didn't he? Okay,
no, but very, very impressive stunt there. We then jump forward to the next day. It is Andy's birthday, where he is making breakfast in bed for his mother.
And he does it so fucking bad. I don't give a fuck that he's a kid. He does it terribly.
I do want to just go ahead and let you know that my attitude towards him for the rest of this conversation is going to be he's the worst part of this film by a lot, and I hate him.
Yeah, I have a note that says Andy is such a bad child actor that I literally root for Chucky the entire series.
Now, I will say he's cute, but is the acting trash?
Yeah.
See,
I've met this guy. He he goes to Spooky Empire all the time. Super nice guy. Really loves what he did. Loves that he was a part of this franchise. And honestly, I'm being really, like, for the most part, jokingly cruel to this 6-year-old. But it is like there are scenes where he's just impossible. I'm like, did anybody try to direct this child?
So I don't know. I don't think I'm as harsh on his acting as you guys are.
It's because you weren't a child actor. Alistair and I used to be in pageants.
That's true. And like stage shows and stuff.
We were perfect.
Okay.
I'm the best actor in the whole
Our
world.
house is built of sashes.
And ribbons. All blue.
Concrete, probably.
Yeah, I would say mostly
Bricks.
that.
Probably some wiring.
There are some sashes,
Did you
though.
win all of that, or
Yeah.
the bricks and stuff?
Yeah.
The bricks are what they threw when we misbehaved or performed poorly.
Imagine how happy our father was when we won the crown pool.
Anyway, Andy Barclay, this boy,
Yes.
is played by Alex Vincent,
Did you say boy?
because I'm from the South.
Boy.
And he plays Andy in both Child's Play 1 and 2. And then, spoilers, he comes back in Curse and Cult of Chucky. And then he is also in the Chucky series.
Yeah, and like Alex as a person, he's like super nice. He's a really cool dude.
Besides that, he hasn't had a whole lot of other credits.
Oh, and really quickly, bit of housekeeping for the Child's Play / Chucky franchise. We are not covering the Mark Hamill Aubrey Plaza. We consider that a full-blown remake.
I think it is.
We're not, when we go over the franchises, we're just going over them as they were created initially. We're not going to do remakes. And then we're also, like we did not do Evil Dead Rise or the MTV Scream TV show, we are not doing the Chucky TV show. If you are interested in stuff like that, want to talk to us, you can always reach out to us on social, get our opinions. You can send us texts and whatnot. But as far as covering it in dedicated episodes, we're not planning on doing that yet.
Yeah, if we do that, it will be at a later date. And a moment ago, PJ misspoke. He said Evil Dead Rise. He meant Ash versus Evil Dead series, but we'll keep going.
Yeah.
The other person, the person that he's making the breakfast in bed for, is his mother, Karen Barclay. She's played by Catherine Hicks. She was in a movie called Death Valley from 1982. She was in Peggy Sue Got Married, which is kind of the, for lack of a better way of explaining it, almost a Back to the Future, but from a woman's point of view. And then she was in Star Trek IV, Voyage Home.
Well, okay, so on the subject of the kid, I get why they picked him, right? Like, he's adorable.
Right.
And I okay, joking aside, the jokingly cruel jokes aside, there are plenty of scenes where he comes off as just a very, like, naive, innocent little kid. And then every so often, he'll, like, deliver a line or do something where I'm like, you guys didn't think maybe you should, and I really shouldn't even take it out on the kid. I should be saying, how come nobody stepped in and went, hey, bud, we're gonna do that again. Can you act, like a little more scared? Or like there's the, throughout the movie, there are these scenes where like something horrific's happening and he'll be like, Mom?
Like bored.
Mom? And it's like, dude, come, like.
There are also several moments, and this is not a big deal at all, but I figure while we're talking about him and his performance, it's worth mentioning. There's several times where he says Chucky's name, but there's this huge space between the ch and the key. He's like, Chucky. And it's like, why are you doing
Specifically
that?
by Eddie's house when they get to Eddie's place.
Yeah, him
just-
walking around.
He's just calling it. Yeah.
He's running around this old abandoned house that looks like, I'm going to keep mentioning Candyman, but it looks like Cabrini Green in
does.
Candyman. And he's running around and he's like, Chucky, because he's running and it's the dumbest sounding thing in the
Now,
world.
he is adorable, and I do think for many scenes he sells it, but it's like weird, like, okay, so when he's punching him, trying to get him to talk, there's like no emotion. It's like, you can tell that they were like, okay, now say talk, damn it, talk, and like swing your, and there's just like no, it's not at all, and I get it, he's little, but like there's no, so I don't know, I see the casting because he's adorable and because he's believable as being like a cute little kid.
Yeah.
But like, he's no like Haley Joel Osment. You know what I mean? Like, he's not like selling the fear.
He's no Macaulay Culkin.
No. Nobody
Pin.
is.
Pin and Macaulay Culkin.
Oh,
I stuck a pin in Macaulay Culkin. I've been, there's a restraining order on me now.
Oh, God.
But yes, we join our mother, and as previously mentioned, her friend Maggie, at the department store, where they meet a Mr. Criswell, and I took his name down because I have a theory. Okay, you know how they call him the Lakeshore Strangler. Right. But he's got a backup. He's got like a sidekick. And at the time I was like, well, serial killers work alone. Famously, they don't have sidekicks. Dexter didn't have a sidekick, and he was real. So the whole thing that I came up with was that Charles Lee Ray isn't actually the Lakeshore Strangler. He was framed, and he's actually the hero. And Mr. Criswell, the creepy, large glasses-eyed,
little pink bow tie,
dead fucking you have to keep working your counter. That's the Lakeshore Strangler.
Well, even if he's not the Strangler, I would say he's still a villain because he participates in capitalism.
Yeah.
So
eat the rich.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, the doll costs $100, and I don't know if that's a lot at the time.
I looked
I would
it up.
assume so.
In 1988, $100 is worth $266 in 2024.
My God,
so it's like
$66,000.
No, but after tax, that's like almost $300. That's like a $300 doll, like a $270 doll. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I mean, do you remember,
a Nintendo Switch is $300 and change. So that's right for a doll.
Oh, man, that's a way to put it in perspective. And I mean, we had those sorts of doll crazes when we were growing up. You had things like the Tickle Me Elmo,
Furby,
the Cabbage Patch was a little bit before our time, like for the real craze of it.
Real dolls.
That's a different thing.
No, Furbies were big in the 90s. That was like the big one was that stupid. And just like in Chucky, there was the time that I had one and I pulled the batteries out. And they had these light sensors, the little shape in between their eyes were light sensors. And when you would cover them, it was supposed to put them to sleep. And so I pulled the batteries out because mine wouldn't shut the hell up. And here's the thing is in the middle of the night, it was like, and I was like, what this shit? And I looked it up years later, like as an adult being like, I swear that thing, they actually retained enough charge from the batteries that they would go on for like they could say several more sentences and would do it periodically. So a lot of people thought kind of like that when she sees the batteries. It's like that.
I mean, that is part of the reason that David Kirshner wanted to make this movie. He wanted to do what Jaws had done for the ocean.
Right.
He wanted to do to children's dolls, children's toys, so that the parents would look at things that they buy their kids and go, could that?
It's wild
to me because this kid to the beach because of the sharks. Now we can't buy him a toy because of Chucky.
Nothing will convince me that the creators of Toy Story weren't like, do you guys want to make Chucky but do it not
emotionally?
Scary?
So she hasn't been able to buy one in the department store or wherever it's available because they're all sold out. But Maggie, like you were saying, PJ, has found a peddler on the street.
Oh my God, it's her fucking fault.
Yeah, the whole thing's Maggie's fault, and she deserves to die.
She did deserve it.
Wow. I'm glad. I hope she rots in hell.
That bitch.
And they work together with this peddler to haggle the price down. And it's not clear.
No. Maggie does it because the woman was like, whatever you want. Our mom was like, whatever. And no, Maggie was like, no, this is not how you talk to street trash. I got it. And knew the lingo. And I was like, oh.
Well, and that lingo pays off. I don't know how much they haggle it down to because
$30.
Well, that's what Maggie tries. I think Karen ends up spending $50.
Yeah,
because that's what he wants for it.
She just is like, I got it, whatever.
Well, yeah, but hold on, because it's when you want, it's 10, and then he's like, no way. And I thought they landed on 30, but we could go 50.
Which, of course, 30 in the 80s would have been $450,000.
I'm looking it up right now, but I don't think that's right either, bud.
But so the doll that they purchase is
$80 today. Well, that's still a shitload of money for that
especially
creepy
because
doll.
Earlier than that day, Andy is unwrapping his gifts. There's a big long box that he wants to open first and ends up as clothes. And he's disappointed. And
he
I
got
wanted
the
a
hammer.
good guy. Yeah. And he gets the tool set. She's like, I'm sorry, I'll get it for you at some point.
He gets Chekhov's good guy hammer.
That's pretty good.
Wow. I like that.
But you have sort of and this is a reference to The Office of all things, but it's like a princess unicorn situation. It's like, well, no, I need the doll. I promised my kid I'd get the doll. And so Chucky ends up home with them, not being able to get her to work. Her friend says, I'll babysit. And then we kind of full speed ahead into getting, getting our...
It's good.
We go full speed ahead and getting our child at least up to scratch as to what's happening.
Yeah.
And my favorite line in the entire movie, delivered by obviously not Chucky, because Chucky's great.
Right.
But it's Maggie, Aunt Maggie, Chucky wants to watch the 9:00 news.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
because
an amazing line.
You can just hear Brad Dourif being like, "Hey kid,
Also,
I gotta watch the fucking 9."
It is. So I will give credit to this whole section of this film. Is that the second that you as the watcher twig onto the fact that like, okay, like you've kind of, but you start to realize like, oh, he's talking to him by not giving you his voice. It is so creepy that you see him like leaned in and you don't hear anything. And he's like, oh, Chucky says this, Chucky says that. And you're like, okay, is he...
Well, Chucky shouldn't be fucking saying anything.
Right, except for like,
Hidey-ho.
And then when pressed, it's still the good guy voice. It's like, I like hugs or like, and there's a moment we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure, but like haunting the way that when you watching it back and really thinking like, he's choosing when to do the good guy doll voice, when to do the like the pre-programmed little voice, like I'm your friend to the end. And it's like, he's putting this on to I don't know, like camouflage, right?
It reminds me of the Evil Dead because of the way that like those possessed, the Deadites, kind of they chameleon back to being, and we mentioned this quite a few times over the reviews of those movies, but they kind of pretend to be normal. They pretend to be those, untroubled youths that are all there to have fun, to kind of hesitate there would be exorcists essentially. And then in this one, it's like a serial killer knows, oh, well, if I continue to play pretend as the doll, I can kill this kid, his whole family, and then escape.
Well, and at a certain point, and I don't remember when, but at a certain point, he even says like, well, Chucky said not to tell anybody
or he'll kill me.
And it's like, woof.
Which hints at a lot of real world stuff, all of which are very dark.
Right.
Whether that was intentional or otherwise.
No, I feel like it is. There's this very unique sort of, it's the exploitation of naivety and youth. I really think, because you mentioned it about capitalism, but I also like, I can't help but feel not specifically a like sexual abuse necessarily, but there's absolutely like this, like, I have this dominion and this power over you, but also like the adults can't know. And so it feels very, like the Boy Scout leaders and the Catholic priests and like the people that get taken advantage of are the children that get taken advantage of by these adult figures who then are afraid and balk of real actual adults. There's a lot of crossover in horror movies into this kind of idea of the people that get like abused or get taken advantage of in any way. And I feel like this is just, there's that moment where you go, there's the representation right here in that film is that dynamic, like you said, of like, don't tell anybody or it's you, right? Or it's your mom or it's you. And it's like, that's so real world scary that like, I think it brings a legitimate terror to this. Otherwise, this like child's toy, this doll, he's like really that's scary as shit.
And right out of the jump, we kind of get proof of that because, all he wants is to watch the news. And then obviously the human woman who's in the house is like, well, no, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he wants to watch the news.
But you got to go to bed, kiddo.
And then while watching it tonight, Alistair made a good point, which was, obviously, Chucky is moving around through the house. Obviously, he is. And Maggie calls Karen at her job.
Backwards. Karen calls in while Maggie's the wall and is like freaking out. And the phone rings and she like, by this point, by the time the phone rings, the chair has been moved. There's flour that's been knocked over all over the kitchen. A plant has been moved. And she's already kind of
obvious sounds like footsteps.
Things are moving around. Yeah. She sees the doll is missing.
She picks up the call and she's like, oh, I must have given myself like the late night scare. And it's like, no.
This isn't the Willies. There are tangible signs that something is moving in your home.
And whether or not it's a, possessed doll or just the kid that you are babysitting is running around doing stuff.
Or a burglar or like something is not right. And she's just...
Or a cat.
And she just goes, no, everything's fine.
And then it isn't fine because Chucky hits her in the eyeball with a hammer. And
Chekhov's good guy hammer. There it is. They show it.
It's a
he
quick
uses
payoff.
it. Oh yeah. It's like the first violent act that happens. After he becomes a doll. I do love that it's like almost comical how far back she falls.
Yes.
I kind of wish that they had her closer to the window for again, I'm going to reference it and I'm sorry, but because it reminded me so much of the Batman Returns bit where Selena Kyle is being backed up into the window by Max Schreck, Christopher Walken, and he gets real close and he like almost lets down. He goes from being really like intimidating to like, I'm kidding, of course, I'm kidding. And then he gets her the tiniest little shove, but she's already up against the plate glass, so she just goes backwards.
Right.
In this film, you don't ever see him move by this point. You just see the back of the hammer. Wow.
Yeah.
And it nails her in the forehead, but then she like stumbles back 3 or 4 steps, drags everything off the table, another 2 or 3 steps back over and I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
It is a far, walk for her to fall out that window, but the reasoning behind that is just because of spatially how the kitchen is built, and that they wanted the shock of, we've been watching Chucky run around from his POV.
Yeah.
From 2 feet off the ground. Like that's the height of the camera, is it's running around the house and picking up the hammer and doing things like that.
Which is brilliant use of that POV. I love that the tension it builds if you're seeing this like little angry
and you hear the little pitter patter of feet on the ground
Yeah.
and things like that. But then she's looking around shocked, and you don't expect there to be a hammer at head height to her.
Right.
And so that's it. She had to be close enough to that counter for him to be able to do that, but then they still wanted her to fall out the window.
It's just the little tweaks that like you wonder how they didn't go, because standing there that day, I would have gone, well, stand him up on the table. The table is a foot from that window. Have him stand up on the table instead of the counter. And I don't, it's that thing where you almost wonder like, did you think it looked great? Did you whatever? Anyway, that's my only gripe about that whole sequence, is that she kind of like comically stumbles. But the death is pretty fucking grisly, honestly.
Well, it reminds me of the fourth Scream movie when Alison Brie's character falls from a building into that news van. And she Maggie hits it's like a truck, like a work truck out on the street, and she falls on top of it, and it like crumples.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's an actual stunt that was done there. They had a stunt woman who did the main shot falling out the window. And then for the ending shot, they had a concrete filled dummy that actually hits the truck.
Oh.
And then they had, I think, air canisters to shatter the glass, to blow all the glass out.
So that's why it looks like it, because it looks grisly. When she hits that Jeep, it looks gnarly.
Yeah.
This is where we meet Detective Mike from Homicide, which I love this because so she gets home and police presence, ambulances everywhere.
They're talking to this little kid, but nobody's tried to contact her.
Well, and that makes sense.
It's like the 80s. You're right.
But she's running around. She's like, Andy, and she finds him. And Mike immediately introduces himself as Homicide. And then she's like, where's Maggie?
And he's like, come outside. We got to talk in the hallway.
And he's like, ma'am, she's dead.
What?
And Karen's like, oh, what? It's like a fucking homicide detective's in your house. What did you think happened to her?
I also see the reaction where she's like, there are a bunch of cops in the house and they're clearly questioning my child. And there are these little good guy prints in the flour on the counter. And like, you can see her being like, you can't question him, but it's sort of like,
Because she doesn't know what's happened at this point.
Right.
So she needs to get their story straight before.
Right. But which I'm sure there's like a legal argument to be made about like, yeah, you don't have to answer questions. But she's like, you all need to leave my house. And they do. They just pack up and leave a crime scene. And I'm like, well, that's not how that works. You can say like, I'm not talking to you without a subpoena or whatever. Like, we're going to leave. I'm sure all that's probably fine. But you can't be like, get out of my house. Like, no, then someone died. They're going to stay till they figure it out.
This is also where I really noticed it in the good guy branding, because it's like the stripes and the overalls, but then there's all the little images of the tools, the good guy tools.
All over his
and,
little...
Yeah, and because Mike goes, well, what's on your feet there? And he's like, oh, it's my good guy slippers, or whatever the fuck he says.
Sleepy PJ slippers
Sleepy
or something.
slippies or whatever. But on the bottom of them is a gun.
Yeah.
Like a revolver.
It's the hammer.
It's the good guy gun.
Yeah, it's a gun, a hammer, a wrench, a couple other things.
So how the fuck didn't Chucky use that? That's my point here.
Oh, the good guy gun. Did that come with the toolkit?
Yeah.
So Detective Mike Norris is played by Chris Sarandon. He was in Dog Day Afternoon, Fright Night, which was also directed by Tom Holland. He was Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. And he is...
That's where I know him from. Okay.
And he is also Jack Skellington's voice, his speaking voice from Nightmare Before Christmas.
I knew that the Princess Bride and Jack's voice were the same guy. I hadn't put it together. That was him. Yep. That's interesting.
And he has now taken the hammer as a possible murder weapon. This is probably the best example, Alistair, what you mentioned before, of Chucky choosing his moments to reveal, his speaking voice and things like that, because Karen checks Andy and Chucky back into bed, and she goes to leave. And before that, she hears voices at the door. She hears Andy talking to someone. And so she goes in and they have this little talk.
This is why I keep saying that Maggie's a bitch, by the way. I don't hate women. I feel like I need to say that because I keep making that joke, but it's this scene where she asks him, is there anything you want to talk to me about? And he's like, just, this, that, the other. And he's like, does Chucky say anything else? Yeah, Chucky said Aunt Maggie's a bitch that got what she deserved.
Yeah.
And she's like, whoa.
Which, let's be clear, our opinion here at the Third Channel podcast is that she was, and she did.
Well, it is her fault that there's a serial killer in the house. That's her fault directly.
You've made a really good point. I've not thought about that.
You don't get knockoff toys.
Yeah.
Look, she let the doll be peddled right into the house.
Correct. They're
What's
for
next, drugs?
$30.
What's next? Drugs? Razor blades and candy?
The $30 good guy
guys.
doll kills people. Spend the money. Capitalism.
After that scene, they have their little talk.
Where she immediately forgives him for the record. She's just like, that's fine.
Yeah, you're.
He goes, you're yelling at me because Aunt Maggie's dead. And
yeah.
he's like, yeah.
Not even 10. Your 6-year-old is like, Maggie's a bitch who got. And it's like, and you don't. Why did you say such a horrible thing? And he's like, Chucky did. And she's like, all right.
Well, he also says that Chucky says that he was sent down from heaven by Dad to play with Andy.
Right.
This is revealed that Andy's father is not just out of the picture, but he is deceased.
But I'm trying to figure out, how did Chucky figure that out? He's been in the house for all of 4 hours. How does he know?
Kids talk.
There's a deleted scene. That's probably what you would have to headcanon it as now.
Yeah.
But there's a deleted scene where whenever he first opens Chucky and he shows him around the house. There's a picture of, and it's actually a picture of Tom Holland, if I'm not mistaken. You see it in Andy's bedroom, you see it in the living room. And that is of his father.
Gotcha.
So that's how he knows that. But it's after that scene that Karen then leaves the room, puts them to bed, leaves the room, and she's waiting at the door.
Lingers.
And Andy asks Chucky a question.
I think he says, see, I told you she wouldn't believe me. And then you watch Chucky
turns his head to the door, and he notices that Karen's shadow is underneath.
Yep.
And so he turns back and he just says, I love to hug. End scene.
Is that the first time you see him move on his own?
No. Before that, in the scene earlier, whenever
the news.
Andy says he wants to watch the news, you see his head turned then whenever they mention Eddie Caputo has escaped.
Oh, that's right.
Which is actually where we go next.
To the home of Charles Lee Ray's strangling partner. This scene pisses me off so bad.
The world's worst mother, too.
Yeah, this scene pisses me off so fucking bad. You're telling me that even in the 80s, fuck you, even in the 80s, a fucking 6-year-old is walking around in a fucking ski cap and obviously children's clothes, and not a soul was like, hey kid, it's a school day. Where are you going?
Right. He makes it all the way to the slummiest part of town.
He rides the train from assumedly suburbs to right outside the city.
Right. In slums.
Right. And is walking through some pretty bad areas. There's the shot where he gets off the train and he's walking towards camera and he kind of passes it. There are people that are off the stairs that are starting to kind of fucking beat the shit out of each other.
It looks like a drug deal could be happening just out of frame.
Right.
And Andy's like, Chucky, let's go. And it's just they're tonally just so different. The Chucky, and then man, I'll kill you. And it's just what's happening?
Well, and it's he's not afraid at all.
Yeah.
So he's sort of and I think that's part of my problem with the direction is he just sort of bops through. And it's almost like a Mr. Magoo, where it's an accidental, he didn't get kid. Because he's either getting told by responsible adults to go home, or he's being kidnapped by these crackheads. Like because it is like middle of the 80s crack epidemic, and they're like standing on the outskirts of town by, like you said, like a drug deal. And I'm like, no.
Well, at one point he's like, all right, Chucky, I got to go use the bathroom. And then he goes and he pisses on like a pile of trash. Like
By the train tracks.
Yeah.
Where the drug dealer lives.
He's like, okay, Chucky, stay here. I'm going to go be a drain on society. And he goes and pisses on garbage. And it's just so not a soul was like, hey, where are you supposed to be today?
Yeah.
It's the world's longest piss because a whole scene happens while he's peeing.
Right. He stops to take this piss outside of the rundown hideout house of Eddie Caputo.
Eddie Caputo, who is apparently the co-strangler.
Right. It is a bizarre partnership.
Yeah. Traditionally, stranglers work alone. Again, that's bizarre. And it's like...
Do you know also, though, traditionally, stranglers, they use like piano wire or like a garrote. Eddie comes packed with what I can only describe as the man hand cannon, because this thing is like the biggest gun I've seen in any movie in a long... It's like a Terminator gun. This thing is like clearly like some massive Magnum handgun. And it looks like it weighs a ton.
Right.
And I'm just
So again, you have that weird tonal difference because, and Alistair even, while we were watching, Alistair even goes, God damn, that is a huge gun. And we'd been silent for like 20 minutes.
And it's like a polished, clean, and I'm like, nah, he should have like a little snub nose or something. Like this is like, it's too good.
So it's him going through the house and kind of clearing room by room, trying to find the source of the noise.
Chuck.
And then just fucking Andy running around outside going, Chucky, where are you? And it's just like...
But cut in between all of that is more of the doll POV camera.
Right.
Because we've watched Chucky get up from the chair that Andy left him in and run across the street into this house. That's where we get the first shot of the door pushing open and you actually see Chucky's hand come around.
Now, I love the hand. The way they do the pieces, like arms or shoes. I love that. I really, like, my personal take, nothing against the children and the little people that performed a body as Chucky. It takes me out every time. No matter what the shot is, it takes me out. Because I think this is one of the few films where using an animatronic, because the nature of it is he's a doll, and literally, like, he is an animatronic. So using an animatronic makes it look believable. When they start moving fluidly like a person does, instead of, clunky like a machine, it really takes me out of it. And so there is a sequence here where you do see that run, and that run looks so bad. Yeah. It bothers me, but I love the way they use just the fingers. They wrap. So the first shot is, it almost reminds me of like the E.T. ride or like a ride at Universal, because the way you can see the camera is tracking and you see the hand, the fingers close on the door and then sort of push it open. And those 4 individual digits, I guarantee there's not much more to that puppet than just those. And it probably was a timer. And you could almost see the composition, right? Like action, camera swings, time the fingers, camera swings further. Now the little hand comes up, because then I think he knocks over a bunch of stuff on the sinks. There's like rats moving.
Yeah, there's a lot of rats and stuff. You go through the house and you see the hand again. He turns on the gas.
And then he blows the pilot light out.
Yeah. Which I like, because you expect this to be the first time that he confronts somebody or that we kind of see the doll. But instead he just tricks his old partner into blowing himself to fucking smithereens and his entire house.
Yeah. So that was actually a real house that they purchased for the production. It was a house that was already going to be demolished. And so they shot all of the stuff that they needed in it, and then they rigged it and it blew it up.
Once again, it just sells so much better when they actually blow shit up. Like, I don't know if that's like, does that sound bad? Because when I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, it doesn't really sound right. But I just feel like it's so much more believable when you're genuinely doing something.
Yes, because you everything has weight. Everything moves in a certain way, and you expect it to. And so seeing that actually happen, that's different. And when they have something like this where they can use something that was going to be destroyed anyway, it adds to their set decoration. It adds like so much to it without them having to spend an extra dime.
I'm such a believer too in practical effects. Like when you look at like Christopher Nolan, how he literally he had painted tanks that were sent like something like, like 1,000 yards down, where it wouldn't matter that they weren't 3-dimensional. He just added matte paintings of tanks so that they were even more down in the distance. But by it being physical and the light was hitting them right, and you know what I mean? Like it just adds so much more to have something tangible there. Yeah. I really appreciate the practicality of this film. like a lot. I really think it's very most of the time it's really well done, and it pays off really well. It makes something sort of fantastical and not scary become something tangible and a little scary even for the viewer. It's like, oh, this is a kind of a creepy thing that could be real.
Yeah. After that, we go to the police precinct really quickly, and that's basically just for Karen to go and pick up Andy.
And this is kind of the second time where we see that repeated trend of the police are trying to talk to Andy without her there.
Yeah.
Her getting a little upset about that and trying to go
the
off
exchange of power, again, is represented there when, like, and it makes sense. Cops would be questioning, even if you're 6 years old, they're going to be asking you questions.
Well, and in their defense, why was this child at deceased strangler Eddie Caputo's house? Also, if they're like got the code names and everything, they're the Lakeshore Stranglers. Why does everyone just also know what their names are? These guys are the worst serial killers in history. The only reason we talk about Charles Lee Ray so much later is because he turned himself into a doll.
I was going to point out while they're in the police precinct that's that scene I was talking about where he's like trying to evoke some emotion, and I feel like it would have been a lot more impressive if there was actually some emotion. But it is also when the kiddo gets dragged away. That's when Andy gets like pulled, and they're like, "Yeah, your son's crazy, so he's going to go to our little fun hospital."
Yeah, that is an important detail.
Yeah, well, because it takes him away from harm. You think anyway. Like the idea is he's no longer in harm's way, and that's when he says, Chucky said, if I told anybody, he'd kill me. And the mom's like, there's no way, this is all BS. But that puts that seed of doubt in her seed. He said it in her head, where then then when you get back to the apartment, she's looking at the doll and says, say something, talk to me. And then she almost realizes like, this was stupid. Of course he's not gonna.
No, that is whenever she gets back to the apartment with Chucky, this is probably the best sequence in the whole film for me.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think this is the moment where the character that we would then love for the next 20 years or 30 years is established. I think it's in these moments with the way his voice is when he's kind of, giving that rage performance.
Well, she starts by saying, say something. And what does he say? Oh, I love to be hugged. I think he says, I love to be hugged again to her. And she's like, right. This is ridiculous that I even believed that.
And she leaves him on the coffee table, and then she goes to check out the box. This is the part to me.
Yes, it's the most. To me, it's the most chilling moment of the film. It's chilling. It's
super suspenseful because she goes in, she picks up this big box in the kitchen, and she turns it around to, I guess, try and figure out where does this doll come from or what's going on or
anything.
Something.
She spent this whole movie trying to get something to go on.
And so as she
I
does
was watching him the whole time too. So because
Exactly.
I'm watching him like a hawk and he's blurred and he doesn't move. You think he's gonna. They're setting the whole thing up for him to move and he does not.
That's the genius of the whole sequence. He doesn't move. She moves the box. The batteries fall out. And we like snap zoom onto these batteries, and it's her realizing, how has he been talking for the last day if the batteries are not in him? Right. And so she goes over to him. She picks him up. She opens him up. There's no batteries inside.
And he lets the whole thing happen.
Yes. And then his head flips around, Exorcist style, and he says, "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play?" And she drops him, and he tumbles under the couch.
When you and I, Derek, rewatched this in the beginning of the week, I mentioned that I think that's an excellent stunt. Because the doll falls and hits the ground and then rolls as though on its own, like kind of military rolls under the couch. But that has to have been like wire of some sort. And that's what I think.
Yeah. I actually have, they talk about it on the commentary with Don Mancini and David Kirshner. They talk about how they built the floor set right there. They rebuilt it at an angle. And so when you have the carpet on it, and they actually put the couch on an angle as well.
So it looks flat.
And it looks flat from that angle above. So when you dropped anything, it rolls under the couch immediately, but it gives it that unnatural sort of like bounce that it does.
Well, because it does. I think the implication is that he does a roll.
Right.
Like he hits and goes, nope. And then you think he's going to be gone, but he's still just stone
She peeks under and he's still there. She pulls him back out.
This whole sequence is very Scream. Is very horror trope. No, just kidding. We're not doing that this time. It's he's gonna be gone. Nope, there he is.
It is, it's this setup, and you're waiting for the payoff to happen, and every time you get a little more tense, a little more tense, a little more tense. So she takes him over to the fireplace, and this establishes it's a gas fireplace. She turns it on.
Well, and I was going to say, so this is another Chekhov's gun because they take this moment to show you, turn this knob, the matches are on the top of the mantle, you strike it up against the bricks and throw a match in, and it's going to happen instantly, which it does come back to be super important. Also, I'd point out that by this point, Chucky, what I love about this sequence is that Chucky has now exhausted all options to get her to fuck off.
Yeah.
Without exposing that he is not just a doll. He has malfunctioned. He's done the head whip around and try to creep her out. He has rolled himself under the couch to be like, just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Just walk away. Because I think he feels like, my thought I take away from this, if at any point she walks away for 2 minutes, that doll can get out. He can book it. He can run. He can hide.
What I take away from it is also that Charles Lee Ray is not an intelligent man. And I don't mean that to be like critical of
but he's not like
character, but like
he's not Ghostface. He's not like
well, not even, because Ghostface is usually an idiot. What I mean is like he's not in these moments thinking of the best ways to get out. He's just like throwing noodles at the wall.
Well,
he has no idea what to do in these situations, and then what we will then talk about for the next several weeks is that historically he then just goes full rage mode.
Yeah,
and his first choice every time is he bites. Chucky's a fucking biter. He bites the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Well, and so then, she goes, you're going to talk to me. You're going to say something. I'll make you talk. Sets the fire and gets him right over the edge. And it is the coolest fucking shot because he goes down behind her arm as the good guy doll and comes back up as Chucky. And you just see this horrible little man face. And I don't know, because the thing is that like I said in the intro, I love Bride and Seed. And the more fucked up Chucky gets, the more I love. In fact, and I'm, again, spoilers, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of teasing, but there are in a future iteration, you even think that he looks like the regular good guy doll again, and then the main character peels the wax off and you see the staples. Like, you're so used to this, like, that's the way he looks. You almost forget that, like, in the first one, he's just this weird little hybrid man doll thing. Baby man.
A more highbrow movie at this point would have him give some sort of monologue about his plan or about how he escaped death or whatever. Not Chucky. Chucky's like, you fucking bitch.
He calls her a bitch and a slut, and then he bites her fucking arm.
He's throwing just at the fucking wall. He's screaming like a maniac.
Thrashing around.
He bites her. He punches her. He pulls her hair.
Kicking and biting.
He's not trying to do it. He's not trying to be a cannibal or an artist.
Do you know what else, though? They really do a good job of showing that, like, you can tell he's used to having more weight throwing around. He's used to, like, a punch really would, like, take her out. Or, like, he's like, it's almost this frustration of, I'm in this stupid little fucking body. And, like, that becomes the trope throughout the whole of his existence is, I always end up in this stupid fucking body. And you can almost tell, like, those dreams when you're like fighting and you go to swing and a punch, but you feel like you're punching underwater.
Right. I was going to say, it's like the dream of weightlessness.
Yeah. He feels like he's trying so hard to like knock this chick out and he just can't get weight behind what he's doing.
Well, then to put that into physical practice, he is then bodily tossed across the room.
And then he just runs.
That must be a surreal experience to have been a guy and you're a man. And you're however tall Brad Dourif is, but you have, you weigh something.
Like a 6 foot, at least like 160, 175 pounds.
Right.
At minimum.
To then just be tossed like you're a Frisbee. Just, that must have been a lot of fun.
And I guess that brings up a good point because this is kind of the first time that you hear Brad Dourif's voice come out of the doll. And apparently that was not the original intent or idea there. He was obviously going to play the serial killer at the beginning. And then they were going to have a different voice entirely for the doll. And it took them several voices to kind of figure out what Chucky was going to sound like. The most interesting version of this, and there's none of this that still exists anywhere, but apparently they did a version where Jessica Walter was the voice of Chucky. Jessica Walter from Arrested Development.
Right, Lucille Bluth.
Archer.
Yeah.
Why?
Because they used a woman's voice for the demon in The Exorcist.
Okay.
So they were going off of that. And then that didn't work for the tone that they were going for. And they eventually just brought Brad Dourif back and was like, well, yeah, you're just going to voice him now.
I love all of my victims equally. I don't care for Andy.
So my thing is, that's a good one. My thing is we always do this, right? Where you're like, oh, I can't imagine Hellraiser if Doug Bradley hadn't been Pinhead. But like, fuck this franchise if it wasn't for Brad Dourif being that little angry doll. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think it would have lasted as long. I don't think it would have worked as well.
Well, Bride and Seed wouldn't have happened if they had gone with some like demon voice for the doll instead of, I think it would have been this movie, maybe two, because they were doing sequels for fucking everything at this point. But like, I agree. I don't think they would have gotten to the full thing.
I wouldn't think so. Chucky does get away. Karen goes back to the police precinct and talks to Detective Norris.
And like the proof that she gives him is like a mark of desperation. It's like, because you are so desperate for this to be done, for this thing to be found and for to be taken seriously, that you say things like, well, the batteries are out. So, I mean, he's obviously alive. And it's like, well, you know that.
Yeah.
Because you have seen it with your eyeballs, but he has no idea. And she's like, well, Chucky bit me. And she pulls it back.
Now, I will say that bite, they do a good job of like, I don't know what the fuck else that could be but tiny little teeth. Because like, it looks like a tiny little bite. That's what it looks like. And I think that's the first time he goes, what happened? Like he stops going, you're making this up. And it's like, okay, now hold on.
Something did happen.
Right.
We just, he can't make sense of it. And I guess Karen believes that the only way that she might be able to figure this out is to go back to the peddler who sold it to her in the first place.
No, I don't get that one like at all.
It's
I do
loose.
not.
They need a way. I think plot wise, they need the movie to happen. So they need.
So can I be honest with you? Like, if I'm writing this, I go, okay, well, the cop, because they reveal the cop's the one that killed. Oh, he shot Brad Dourif at the beginning. I feel like this is the moment where he goes, Charles Lee Ray, that toy, but that's strange. This doll does look a lot like the one that was, let him put it together. I don't know what they were like trying to make this like the mom-centric storyline and have him just be like the sort of like both bad guy, bad boy cop and also white knight at the end. But like, none of that pays off. I feel like the screenplay, knowing that it went through 8 iterations or whatever and was like in purgatory, honestly makes me feel a little bit better, because I'm looking at this going, guys, the answer is that he puts it together. He's like, what was this kid and this doll doing? So this doll was at Eddie's house. And Eddie was the guy that I shot like 3 days ago and was doing some weird shit with one of these dolls. No way. And now she's saying it's alive. Like, I feel like that could have been like his moment.
Could have been really, abbreviated. They wouldn't have had to do this because they go
the weird rapey
to
scene,
the peddler, and then they go to Charles Lee Ray's house.
Right.
And it's just, there seems to be too much. And believe it or not, like, this movie, apparently the rough cut of this movie that they showed to test audiences was like over 2 hours long. And they cut like a half an hour out.
It does seem though like the things that they cut were like both times now that you've been like, oh, there's a deleted scene. I'm like, oh, that goes a long way to explain the plot. But they didn't cut out the part where like the peddler with the bat. So
I
they
think
do
at
a
that point,
4-minute monologue.
Too much is already set. Those scenes could be cut where this couldn't.
Because they do that like 4-minute montage where she like points to her teeth. She's like, I'm looking for the peddler with the bad teeth. And I'm like, you mean all the crackheads in this alleyway? Okay. And then my favorite is the guy's like being gross and like clearly they're like insinuating that he wants to take advantage of this woman. And then the guy shows up and he like pulls the cop pulls his gun out and they're like, oh my God, he's a cop. And I'm like, wait. Don't be worried about that. He pulled a gun on all of you guys, like immediately. And I love that too. It's like 80s police brutality trope where he's just like, I'll shoot every one of you people.
It was very RoboCop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just whips that gun out.
From the alley, we go to both probably the most interesting moment in the movie to me and also the least interesting because they split up.
Yeah.
Karen and Detective Mike split up. Detective Mike has a really interesting scene where he, the non-believer, the dismissive, the badge, is then convinced, because believing is better than, seeing is better than believing. He is then convinced of the fact that Chucky is a murderous doll.
Whereas number 1 of 2 strangle attempts in the film.
Right.
Yes. And
he puts that yellow cord around his throat.
It's a weird sequence because it's like Chucky could have killed him a couple of times.
Right.
Like he stops choking him and like runs
Also,
away.
instead of choking him with his tiny little doll body, maybe just use the knife and slit his throat. That's an instant death.
Because then he has a knife and they do like it's almost like a comedy bit.
Do you know
where,
what I
like,
will say, though?
The knife is going up towards Detective Mike and he's like, oh,
It's very like Indiana Jones.
And he's like, yeah, it's really out
Do you know
of
what
place.
I will say, though, is I think it was brilliant to put Chucky with the adult man with a gun in the moving car. It's the only way that he's a threat. But he's a threat because the dude can't stop the car.
Well, kind of. We enter a hallway at one point where he just gets the bejesus shot out of him, but we'll get there. But he survives his attempted murder by Chucky.
At one point, Chucky's like pressing on the gas pedal, just like, let's go. Full speed.
And it does establish your overall reason for this guy to believe that it's Charles Lee Ray is because the last thing that they recorded of Charles Lee Ray saying is that he would get revenge on both this detective and his partner. The partner is now dead via explosion. And so it's
hey, it's me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is clearly him. But there is so much evidence of that before this that like the big like, oh my God, you were telling the truth. It's like, well, yeah, that should have been you should have been like, there's no way, but maybe. It should have been a tinkle of suspense in your mind that might be real.
Also, I like that this is the first time where Chucky's like, oh shit, I can be hurt. Because like he's doing all this reckless shit thinking I'm a doll, which it kind of gives you the idea of, oh, that's why he was so smiley when he was dying, was like, oh, if I put my soul in this doll, I'm invincible. Yeah. And then that's when, so I'm sure we're moving on to that. But then he goes to John and he's like, I got shot. It hurt.
Well, and before we finish with the exposition, we are given a hint about that exposition because Karen goes to Charles Lee Ray's home, which is bizarre.
Yes.
Makes zero sense.
The drawings look less like Brad Dourif. They look more like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, but it's also
all the drawings
just
look like him.
It's also just like, what is he?
Yeah.
Is he a serial killer? Is he like
an occultist?
Right, because it's very different. And you can be both, I assume. Robert Rodriguez, you can be the Satan killer, but Robert Rodriguez. No, that's wrong. It's Richard Ramirez. You can be Richard Ramirez, the Satan killer, and have the pentagrams on your hands. You can be evil and a cultic and a serial killer. I'm fine with that. However, in a movie that is this niche, is this genre of doll murder, it's like you should probably just stick with one.
It also it feels like, I guess you could be a cowboy pirate, but you should be either a cowboy or a pirate. Like, why did we have to make cowboy pirates? Like, it doesn't. And also nothing about him is very occult. And they come back to that in the later subsequent films. He's got like artifacts and stuff.
Yeah, they do more with the lore. They build upon it with every film. Yeah. But this one is super loose. It's basically just he knows this guy John, Dr. Death, and he knows the chant.
Well, and like John...
Well, we're getting to that scene right now, I think, right?
And he's like presumably just kind of a guy.
And he says, you shouldn't tell your customers where you hide things like this. He's talking about the voodoo dolls. So like he pays him. They're not even friends. He's a customer.
But he has him painted on his fucking wall.
Yeah.
Like huge. Again, I know we're in the weeds with this. I know none of this is the point, but it is just weird.
But that's kind of the point, is none of this is the point. So you cut the part about his dad being dead, but we don't rewrite this to just, you don't. Like I said, the Frankenstein lightning bolt on the which again, like you said, it does come up later. That the whole idea, I think, is it the next movie that they justify with this, or no? That's the plastic. I'm sorry, and you guys tune in next week. But I mean, in future films, they touch on a lot of different ways to resurrect Chucky. But I do feel like they don't ever do it again, where they're like the voodoo, like it's almost not used much.
Yeah, with the lightning, you're thinking of Friday the 13th Part 6. Where Tommy Jarvis resurrects Jason Voorhees with a big piece of fence.
I was going to say just Frankenstein, honestly. Like, just give me enough pseudoscience where because like you said, wasn't the original draft that they were putting Brad Dourif to death, and so the electricity like jumps across the toy factory.
Yeah,
one of the
drafts.
Was
a draft, yeah.
Honestly, if that means that we don't have 12 minutes of random voodoo shoved into a film that does not need it, okay.
Yeah, but then you don't have Brad Dourif screaming Dembala, which is... I did
love though that he like, I guess, has a perfectly working voodoo doll of this John, and that's scarier than all of it. The way he just goes and like breaks the dude's leg, and I'm like, okay, if you could do that to everybody, that's way scarier than being a little doll.
That's what we clipped of this movie. And again, just a little peek behind the curtain. As we were setting up for this and kind of recording that clip, I don't know that that's the strongest, most tonally relevant clip of this movie. It is the clip of this movie where we kind of get the most Charles Lee Ray characterization. So I think that's the obvious
He's
choice.
wicked and he's yelling.
But
I mean, that or the clip would have just been for like 2 minutes.
The movie focuses on him being a doll, which is obvious. But as a result of it focusing on him being a doll, him being a guy and what he did as a human doesn't really matter anymore.
Right.
I also feel like they're so close to a theme where he's a doll and we're talking about voodoo dolls and they even use a voodoo doll. And I'm like, you probably could have found that way to work that in too, but you didn't.
Yeah. That scene where Chucky first shows up to talk to John is one of the best uses to me because it's a real quick, he comes in through the window and you get this, I don't exactly know how they did it because it is for one shot, one tiny little shot. There is a little person in a suit and it's whenever he sits down on the counter because it moves different. Everything else in that whole scene is an animatronic.
See, and that's where, so that sequence, and then again at the end, he comes down from the fireplace and you watch him just drop down. And again, it's a little person in a costume. The other glaring moment is in the asylum. You see Andy sees him running up the stairs across the street.
Yep.
And all three of those moments, I got ripped completely out and went, that's not Chucky.
Yeah.
That's not the doll. That is a person in a Chucky costume.
Yeah. For me, those scenes,
And I think the fireplace was actually done with my best estimate is that it was an oversized set piece.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So there is the scene that we're all talking about stuff that we will get to. But any of those scenes are done on a set that is 30% larger.
Right. To make
because the actor who is playing Chucky in those scenes is 30% taller than the
real
Chucky doll.
Right.
And so they had to build a larger set, but they do it for the asylum room. They do it for this counter and they do it for the fireplace, the whole living room, honestly.
Yeah. In subsequent films, they still use, I think it's actually a female little person that plays Chucky, and I think it's 2 or maybe 3. And it's a really big shot of Chucky on the stairs. And stairs were one of because what I love about this franchise, honestly, as puppetry is in our, if you heard the beginning, puppetry is in our family, and Muppet puppetry is in our family along with ventriloquist dolls, and it's all in our family. We grew up with puppets. I love being able to watch from 88 up to the most recent ones, but Bride and Seed are what, 2000s?
Yeah.
You're right. You're watching this technology just exponentially grow. So by the time you get to like Bride and Seed, they're using like mouth, lip animatronics that I do think one of the most impressive parts about Chucky in this film to me is that when he speaks and that mouth stays, then the camera stays on his lips, he's pretty close. For being a motor-driven, hand RC puppeted, he's pretty close. The mouth is really impressive. With that said, stairs were still really hard. So there is a sequence, and I don't remember which film it is. I'm rusty. But the Chucky's coming down the stairs and they show the full little person coming down the stairs, and it throws me off a little bit there too. But what they do is they actually cut into just the feet.
Right.
What a better way to do that. Just show the feet, just show hands, because those don't to rip me out of it.
Right.
It's the full body, this move. Or there's a scene, when he's burned at the end and he's walking, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but when he's walking and he's burned and he's lumbering towards Andy, I think it's because the direction was it's all burnt, you're crispy, but the jerky motion that this performer is now putting into it, suddenly it sells way more like Chucky because the animatronic jerks and is not fluid.
Yeah.
I just wish they had paid a little more attention to the rigidity of the puppet and tried to match that as a performance in a physical body. I think it would have sold a lot better.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like you said, the next time it cuts to him, it's the animatronic again. It's the puppet again. Really sells.
It's knowing, and that's this whole movie, is knowing when to use which effect at any given time.
Right. Yeah.
The biggest thing that we get in this scene, explanations of things that will kind of go over in later movies and continue to grow, is that he's there because the gunshot hurt him. And so John explains that the longer that he is in that doll's body, the more human he's going to become. And that to undo the spell, he has to then say that chant again and transfer his soul into the first person that he revealed himself to, that he was alive in this doll's body. And so Chucky then goes off to find Andy again.
Right. After killing Dr. Death.
Yes. Both Karen and Detective Norris, they show up and find John dying. And he basically explains this to them again. And so they go to try and stop Chucky at that point. But he tells them that in order to defeat Chucky, the only way is they've got to stab him through the heart, because his heart is almost human at that point. That's the only thing that's going to beat him. This is where Chucky then, we cut to Andy, who has been kept in this asylum, for lack of I guess that's
he's like basically in a cell. Yeah.
It's like a prison hospital. It's a strange set.
And it's shot in an actual abandoned like mental institution from what I know.
Okay. That's cool.
You do see, as he looks out the window and he keeps calling out to the doctor, he's here. And the doctor doesn't believe him. And
the doctor who in our most recent watch through, we called Dr. Gary Busey. Because it's obvious that that man is Gary Busey.
Looks like Gary Busey.
He does. Now what I'll say is the actor who is playing, the little person who is playing Chucky in the scene, whenever he comes into Andy's room at the asylum and he like crawls up onto the bed and pulls back the covers thinking that Andy's there.
Yeah.
That is played by an actor named Ed Gale, and he would later go on to play one of the Gringotts goblins.
Oh, cool.
I think he also was Howard the Duck, and he's played
another like super heavy animatronic / body actor movie.
Yes.
That's cool.
And he would also play Chucky or do, some of that performance in Child's Play 2 as well. Andy is able to kind of circumvent Chucky because of this trick that he plays on him and get out the door and out of the asylum, where he then rushes home.
After the doctor gets brutally murdered by Chucky, which is great.
That's a brutal.
Oh, the scalpel to the back of the ankle is so gross.
Yeah. Probably the most gory this movie gets, because it's not a very gory film, but this is it.
It's mostly bloodless, but like this is where most of your blood is. It's like out of his eyes, his nose, his mouth.
Oh, the electrical.
Yeah, and
because he gets like the electroshock therapy headpiece put on, and then it's just cranked to like a 12.
He's also got like sparks that like he's got sparks coming out of his mouth.
It's also Chucky do it. That's where one of the first times you really hear the classic Chucky, because he's got that high pitch like falsetto laugh.
Yeah.
Andy makes it back to the apartment. He barricades the door. He hides in the closet, and he finds a baseball bat.
This is when I realized that
Chekhov's baseball bat, because it comes up back again later. Annoying.
This is when I realized that Chucky would have absolutely no chance against Kevin McAllister. None. If Kevin McAllister had run home from Chucky and had that long to prepare,
15 minutes and Chucky's toast.
Chucky's ass is fucking grass.
Yeah.
Every door handle melts his shitty little plastic hands. A single flight of stairs and he's smashed.
Paint can right to the noggin. Yeah.
He has a tarantula. So, Chucky's fucked.
Marbles on the floor.
A gun.
I do think that the one thing Kevin McAllister needed was a fucking gun. He should have had Eddie's hand cannon.
Yeah.
We cut back to Chucky in the elevator of the apartment, and he travels up, and it's also one of my favorite shots of the whole thing is we shoot this elevator, which we haven't explained. This elevator is like it's in the
cage.
center. It's a cage elevator, and it's in the center of the like staircase that goes around it. And they live on, a high floor, but you see the elevator go up, and then and we're looking up from the lobby, and you see him get out of, and it's a little person and in a costume, but get out of, and you see his feet under the glass floor. You see like his silhouette as he walks to the door. And
is this when the old people talk about the doll, and then she says, "What an ugly doll," and you just hear him, fuck you.
Yeah.
And I love that.
But I also love that it's such a meme because it doesn't look like the good guy doll anymore. It just looks like Chucky.
Yeah, he's just
and he's
an
got
ugly
the
little
fucking
dude.
cigarette lighter burn from his fight with the detective in the car. So he doesn't look scary because he's just laying there blank. But it just looks like a little man, just like fuck you.
I
He's
love that it's also fuck you because that could get her killed, but he's busy. He's got to get to, and he's got shit to do.
Yeah.
You're lucky.
He's got a child to possess.
And that's whenever, I guess because Andy has like blocked the door, that Chucky has to come down through the chimney. And he chases Andy with the knife. Andy has the baseball bat. They tussle a bit, and then Chucky ends up knocking Andy out.
Whacks him with the baseball bat.
And
One
then
arm.
we finally end up, this is our finale, our final sequence here. And
Just like Lord of the Rings that you mentioned earlier with Brad Dourif, this film ends 4 times.
yeah, it does have several. Chucky's, saying the chant over Andy's body.
That lightning is getting very ready to strike.
It's cooking.
Any second now, that glass ceiling of the lobby of this place.
Unlike the glass ceiling of capitalism.
No, not at
That
all.
stands firm.
Both Karen and the detective, they make it back and they are able to stop Chucky from finishing that chant, but he slashes Norris's leg, hits him with a bat, basically knocks Norris out, takes him out.
And the leg does not bleed. To your point earlier, about how it's really not that gory. There's like a bloody slash, but like it's supposed to be some super deep, debilitating cut, and there's like no extra blood.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. This is where we get, you had mentioned earlier, Alistair, how Chucky is like basically chasing them around from room to bathroom, and Karen keeps shutting the door and locking him out. And then she locks the bathroom door. He's trying to get through there, and he's stabbing through the door.
And she's holding the door shut, and she's got the knob, and it literally is a mirror of The Shining, where Jack comes in camera side and she's further away. It's just mirrored.
It's the reverse.
Yeah,
of that,
and it's this knife, and while she's running with this kid who's got the same haircut, I'm going, okay, now this whole movie just went from Gotham to The Shining. It really, that whole sequence is very like, I don't know if that's just an intentional. I'm sure that these smashing through the door was intentional, but that whole like, even what he's wearing with the little pinstripes, the whole thing just sort of like nod love letter to The Shining a little bit there, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, especially with how meta and self-referential and things that this franchise gets later on.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, and also I think this is the moment that this becomes a true to blue slasher movie, because you've gotten the POV, and the hand holding the knife, and the classic telltales, and the larger than life character, and you have all the staples that are kind of met, but this is truly killer chasing victims in space for an unreasonable amount of time. It's where it really becomes a slasher,
and
movie.
it like ramps up to 150 at this ending.
Oh yeah.
They're able to barricade him or stuff him into the fireplace, and we get the payoff to the setup from earlier, where she turns on the gas, and she can't reach the matches herself. She knocks him down on the floor, but she's having to hold the fireplace grate back.
And he's doing, I think, I feel like every Child's Play has a moment where he does the most like Brad Dourif / Charles Lee Ray. Like he is just, it's not even so much that he's beating, the whole doll is just smashing up against this
Throwing his
fireplace
whole
screen,
weight.
and the whole time, and these like guttural noises that you can. His teeth are clenched, and he's just going.
He's good at being like the animal.
It reminds me of honestly, we keep coming back to these same actors. It reminds me, it's almost like he goes from Jack Torrance of The Shining to DeVito as Penguin. When he's like in the duck and he's and he gets all mad. That's that same sort of like violent animal.
You also get a camouflage moment here. He looks at Andy.
Oh,
and he's
God.
like, Andy, I'm your friend till the end. And then Andy says what should be a cold as ice line. But by this point in the movie, I hate this child so much that I audibly, the first time watching this movie with Carly, the very first time I watched this movie, he goes, this is the end, friend. And I audibly went, fuck you, because I just wanted him to get stabbed.
It's also, he's been watching his mom for like 30 seconds or so, really struggle to not be dead, and he's just standing, and you can see her reaching for the matches, and she has to go, Andy, help me, the matches, and he's like, oh right, so like you don't get to say a super witty line like that.
You almost
30
let your
seconds
mom
after
die.
she was like, I have to tell you how to make fire.
You stooge.
What's impressive here is that the fire stunt is done by a little person in a
Yes.
fire costume.
Yeah.
Like it is
Yes.
a real fire stunt.
And it starts with him, this person, I said Chucky, that's why I say him. It starts with him behind the fire mesh, and the actress has to like move because you see that fire go up, and you can tell that whatever like propellant they used, it like ignites quick.
Yeah.
This is where I took the note. Quote, this may be an unpopular opinion, but man, poor Charles Lee Ray. The amount of shit that he went through in this movie, and I'm comparing this movie to all of the subsequent movies.
All he wants to do is strangle.
And like so many terrible things happen to this doll that he is stuck in. And I'm just reminded in the beginning as he burns to a crisp, to a cinder. I'm just like, man, this guy.
So that's ending number 1.
You strangle a nondescript amount of people and then you get burnt alive in a doll body. That's just terrible.
Then they go into check on Norris, and she's like, "Oh, he's hurt. Andy, go in the kitchen for the first aid kit."
And once again, Andy, again, this is like the 5th time he is absolutely useless in 2 minutes because he sees the puddle is gone. And this volume, he goes, Chucky's gone. Mom?
Chucky's gone,
Mom? And she's in the other room after having burned to death a living doll and now tending to the cop who's dying in her living room from a wound that's, quote, bleeding out.
She's also
And-
trying to swallow a femur-sized pill of PTSD.
Yeah, right. And he's in the other room going, Chucky's gone again. Useless. He's useless.
The mom might as well have been like Karen should have whipped her head around and been like, what? Fucking what? Speak up.
You know what?
Then you find out she's like crazy awful to Andy. She's like, what the fuck did you just say? And she like gets really good at his face.
That's why
and
he's been so quiet.
The detective's like, whoa, what is this? And Chucky's like, I came here to save him. I was sent by his father from heaven. And then that ends up being true.
And then.
No more. We'll get sued.
Yeah, that's it. That's the end.
Chucky is melted and stalking again, much like the Terminator.
Yes.
I love
That's a good pull.
That is. I love the makeup. I say makeup. The puppet.
Yeah, the
at
fact
this
that they
point
have to
looks
basically
so
make
good.
a whole new puppet to be the burned version.
And I
of
love
Chucky.
like the way that they designed it. So the one piercing blue eye.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna say it? Should I say it? Can I say it?
Oh no, go ahead.
You know that those blue eyes are the actual same eyes that they used for the Crypt Keeper.
That is correct.
Same eyes as those puppets.
Kevin Yeager, who created and built the original Chucky doll, he also was he worked on the Tales from the Crypt series, and he designed the Crypt Keeper. So he used, to save money, he used the same eyes that he had from the original Chucky in the Crypt Keeper.
There you go.
Anyway, go ahead. So he's got the melty face.
And they end up Karen shoots him with a revolver that I guess she got from the detective.
Is my assumption, yeah.
She shoots him in the head. She shoots an arm off,
Now,
a leg off.
This sequence is the sequence where I think that actress does her best work.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
It is like, that is the moment of this movie that is the scariest to me because the concept is fine. The performances have been fine up to this point, but it kind of gives you a different perspective of what they're actually facing down, which is
She blows his head off.
Right.
And it
It's-
just keeps walking.
It is very hopeless in this moment because we have thrown him, beaten him, burned him, shot him. We have done everything. He is literally headless and melted, and still that body is just like shouldering those gunshot wounds and is still going. And she sells this like numb terror. Like she's so afraid, but it's like I've been going for a day now.
Yeah.
I don't have it in me.
She blows the arm off, then she blows the leg off. And that moment, the face changes from terror to, you know what, fuck this, and she starts to walk forward. And Andy actually, and some of the really good acting he does is he's got her like sweater like by her belt, and he's just leaned up against her. And I thought when I'm watching this, why would he move up with her? And then I realized that's the only safe place you've got is behind your mom.
Yeah.
Like he's 6, and suddenly you realize again, like this would be really scary for a 6-year-old. Yeah, and he's like hiding behind her, and she shoots him again and again and again, and then I guess,
And he dies, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, that's,
Again.
you know, what, the second
ending.
Then we move to the third ending.
Detective Norris's partner, Santos, comes in.
Oh, is he named?
Yeah, he is. He has the name Jack Santos. He comes in, and they are, you know, kind of explaining what has happened before the rest of the police department show up. And
Again, why would he believe that?
He doesn't believe it because why would you?
And then he is
Norris is like, go in there and look for yourself, but do not touch anything.
So he promptly picks up the head.
And he makes a big joke out of it.
which has absolutely nothing. There's no precedent in the film up to this point to say like, oh, don't touch him though.
Right.
Which maybe he's just being cautious.
I think he's just saying like, leave it alone. Let the people come and see the stupid doll. And then, second strangling.
Yep.
Out of an air vent, which
Bursts
I actually I love because I can see the problem. How do we get that little body up, and it's like right there on him?
It's a great little jump
It's
scare.
a good scare.
And that's when Norris pulls, I guess, a different gun.
So there are a couple of guns, and I can actually I identified most of them. So he does hand her his backup piece, which is the automatic, the semi-auto that jams on her. He pulls it out of his sock. Then she pulls his revolver. When he goes down, she picks it up. That's what she's shooting him with, but she's only got the 6 shots. And in fact, at one point, she turns around on Santos and he puts his hands up. There's no more bullets in the gun. It's been clicking. She just points it out of fear. Then this third gunshot, he picks up, and I think he's pulled out either I think it's his semi-auto again that he's pointing, or it might be that revolver again.
It's a revolver for sure, but I don't know where it came from, or if they just reloaded it in the time between.
Right.
It's the good guy gun.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's when Norris shoots Chucky through the heart, and blood splatters against the wall.
My favorite hidden wire bit is right there too, where the head and the body are laying there, and the head's talking to the body because they're both moving, and you don't see any of the cabling at all. Like, it's a really good.
It's another really good animal Charles Lee Ray moment where he's like freaking the fuck out as the head is screaming, kill them all. And it's like, there's no reason, like, you've already lost, but it's just like, I no longer care about winning. I no longer care about living. I just want you to die.
Well, and I guess maybe he could still get into Andy's body.
I mean, maybe.
Because isn't that kind of the preface of the whole return of Chucky, is that he's trying to get to Andy still?
Yeah, we'll get into that next week.
It is the reason that some screenwriter out there, whoever of the melting pot that created this movie's script, decided it was important to write the line, quote, I have a date with a 6-year-old boy. Yeah. It's unfortunate. That's unfortunate dialogue.
And we get Chucky's final line of, hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play? But it goes from Charles' voice to the Chucky voice.
Which I still don't get because he's got no batteries.
I'm not even touching it. We're gonna and that is then what, the third ending?
Yeah, that's the third and final ending. Yeah.
It's Frodo getting on the boat.
Yep.
My problem is they never actually show her getting married to the cop, because we know that's where that's headed. Now they're going to get married. They're going to raise the kid. I'm just kidding.
I wonder if in the second movie we'll find out that she's had a very good life, that she's been very well adjusted.
Yeah.
Oh, the kid's totally fine.
Yeah, my hope is that by the second film we find out that they're totally fine.
Now, the actor, Alex, he does come to Spooky Empire like pretty much every year, every other year. Like, he doesn't like to miss it because Spooky Empire is a horror-themed convention that happens here in the Orlando area in Florida every year. Twice a year. It happens once. They used to call it Mayhem. Now it's just Camp Spooky because it happens in the summertime, and then there's an October show. And he really likes it because it's a great big party. So he's actually, usually he comes out and hangs out. Cool. He came out and sat at the Tiki Bar with Kane Hodder, and the three of them were hanging out. The owner of the con, the three of them were hanging out, and then like Kane Hodder jumped in the pool with all the Jasons, and it was just a good.
Because you hadn't specifically mentioned whom was hanging out. It was just the three of them, and I thought it was, you've got Kane Hodder, and you've got Alex Vincent, and you've got Chucky.
Chunky.
He's real, and he was there.
He was hanging out. The last thing we have is, do we recommend this movie?
Yeah. So yes is the quick answer. I think the long answer is this is another one of those films that we'll go over a million of these in our adventure to talk about every horror movie. This is one of those movies where it is a beloved franchise. And from my perspective, you assume, not knowing anything about horror, not knowing anything. I mean, for somebody like me, Scream is a surprise because I didn't know horror was meta. It seems cheap. And it either seems way too heady, like The Shining, or like stupid,
right?
Like Thanksgiving. You really, from an outsider's perspective, you really only know of two extremes. So Child's Play seems to sit in the extreme of horror, like true fear, because people talk about it. It's beloved, but I didn't realize that it was beloved because it's kind of a meta cult classic sort of deal. So this is a tough one because when you think of Chucky, this is not the movie that you think of. You're probably thinking of Bride of Chucky. It is the most visually familiar to him. And it's also, he acts the most like the character that we know. He looks the most like the character that we know. This is a very different version of that character that then becomes the zeitgeist, becomes ubiquitous with the franchise.
Yeah.
So I do recommend this movie, but I would recommend it with the caveat of if you are expecting to see this character, you would need to. It's every asshole who recommends, whatever TV series and goes, but it doesn't get good until the fourth season. So you have 4 seasons to stick it out with, except this one, it's really just, you don't have to watch any of them. Just watch Bride of Chucky, and then you're good.
Alistair, you want to recommend or not recommend?
Yeah, I do recommend it. And just honestly, the simplistic, I won't bloviate here too much. The simplistic reason is because I feel like when I have a Thanksgiving plate, the stuffing is not something that on its own I'd be like, holy shit, I want some stuffing right now. Like I never crave that. But if I sat down at a Thanksgiving meal and stuffing wasn't next to the turkey and the gravy and the mashed potatoes, I would feel like I'm missing something. And I feel like if you are a fan of the 70s into the 90s slasher genre, if you like this style, you are robbing yourself of something to not know Chucky, to not know the Child's Play and Chucky franchise and the Chucky character. And I feel like in order to properly enjoy, because I agree with PJ, my favorite is the Bride and the Seed. Yeah. But you do not know him, and you can just go in to watch those films, but I feel like you're robbing yourself of some of his more serious backstory. And then going back into sort of the soft reboot where they started doing Curse and those things, and Cult, you need to have seen this.
Yeah,
it just really, like, if you're robbing yourself if you don't. So yes, I do recommend it. Do I think you're going to be like, this was the best movie I've ever seen? No, unless you really love strangling and voodoo. No, but
at the time, it's probably the most unique. As far as slashers go,
I think it still maintains one of the most unique, because I mean, honestly, and this is, we could do an entire, I could sit and talk with you guys for 5 hours about how is Jason and also Michael, yeah, there are nuanced differences. At the end, they're big, lumbering, scary monsters that overpower. And that Frankenstein, you could go on and on about it.
Sure.
And here is this super unique take on, like, he's scary in the specificity of this film. Yeah. 2, I agree, the same thing. And you guys, you talk about it, but I think 2 is the same way. 3, totally miss it.
Yeah.
But one I recommend.
Yeah. No, that's pretty much where I sit. This is one, like I said, I didn't watch whenever I was growing up. I came to it not that long ago, just under a decade, I guess. And it definitely wasn't, I knew about Chucky as a possessed doll. I didn't know that it had anything to do with voodoo. So that was, with the open being what it was, that was interesting to me. And just how much that kind of played into the plot of this movie was a shock. But I do think that there are some really good suspenseful scenes throughout this film, especially with the reveal of him being alive to Karen and, the imagery of him running around, especially whenever he is like burnt and he continues to move after he should be dead. I think all of that is very, very well done. The effects are absolutely incredible, and the blending of all those things. So I would recommend it on that front. It's not my favorite slasher by any stretch of the imagination, but I also don't think that I love Chucky as a character as much as either of you do. So
Yeah, he's like my favorite
yeah,
Here's a
of
good
the slasher genre. I should specify.
Here's a good question as well on this series. Chucky is a little guy, and I think we all know that. Is he a good little guy?
I mean, at one point, I think he was a good guy.
And he's
Yeah.
You know what though? He might not be a good guy, but he will be your friend till the end.
Mm-hmm. Alistair,
Yes.
is there anything that you would like to plug while you're here?
Sure. First of all, whenever you guys watch the second one, even if you don't want me back on your show, I'd like to sit and watch the second one with you guys. It's just fun, and you guys are my friends. Every other Sunday, I host a show called The Graveyard, and it takes place at the Speakeasy Lounge that's in Ybor City on 15th.
That's here in Tampa?
That's correct, yeah. And it starts at doors at 7, shows at 8. It's a place called the Speakeasy Lounge. It is the, quote, most haunted kava bar in the world. It's a kava kratom shop, and they also do coffee and tea, and there's a full restaurant. And then downstairs, they call it the Catacombs, is the liquor bar. We do about 45 minutes of all sorts of variety, and then downstairs we go take a half-hour intermission, grab a drink, hang out, make some friends. It's a really good little community. And then the second act, we go back up, finish it up, and then we hang out. And that's available every other Sunday night. You can also find me at A Graves MC on pretty much everything. And now, thanks to you, I have a link tree. So, come find me on my socials. I am all over the state of Florida. You can also find me hosting at the Spooky Empire for the October shows. I host The Vaudevillains, which is now in its... I want to say 20 years they've been at the convention, or maybe like 18, just shy of how long the convention's been going. But we do the burlesque show there, and then I produce a show called Scream Queens there, which is a drag review that's all horror based at the Spooky Empire. Cool. And even if I'm not performing, you can find me partying at Spooky Empire because it's like one of the greatest horror conventions in the world, and it's like a huge, awesome party. So yeah,
I have yet to make it.
Yeah, you guys, I know. And PJ came out once, but twice. But the one time he was in really an immense amount of pain. We talked about
this last week because when we discussed Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah.
Because the actress who plays the mother in that movie was there, and I met her, and I was in horrific pain.
Yeah, well, so I did a Rockabilly Frankenstein, and my partner, Lilabelle, did a Rockabilly Bride, and Lynn Shay was sitting having dinner next to us at this like hotel bar, and so we like left her alone, and I'm like, that's Lynn Shay, that's awesome, and Lilabelle doesn't really watch a lot of horror, and I was like, she's from Insidious, she's awesome. And as I'm sitting there eating my food, I feel this presence. You just kind of see the light come over my shoulder. I turn, it's Lynn Shay. And she was just like, I just wanted to say you guys look amazing. She got a picture of us. I don't think it ever got posted anywhere, but she was like, can I take a photo with you guys? She was so sweet. But like, that's the kind of environment that Spooky Empire is. Like I said, Kane Hodder jumped in the pool with a bunch of, he was like, anybody who's dressed like Jason right now, get in the fucking pool. And like took like shots, like professional photos of everybody.
Nice.
It's just a cool fucking party. So,
yeah. Well, I want to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I know we used to podcast a lot years ago, and it's nice to sit at a table with you guys again. It's been really wonderful. Remember, folks, you should all at Tubi because they really, really want the sponsorship from Tubi. And if I'm being honest with you, that would help me greatly as well. Because I will ride on these fuckers' coattails for as long as I can. They are my meal ticket.
Remember, the full hashtag is hashtag newbie and schmoobies, groovy movies with boobies and doobies on Tubi. But the easiest one is hashtag third channel Tubi. I just made that up, but that's what it is now.
That's way
hashtag
easier.
Third channel Tubi.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, shit. No. Hashtag Tubi or not to be.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel Podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at ThatDRosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Bell DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the third channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.
Egg salad and eggs.